Our story begins in the dark, with a single torch burning against cold stone and the ring of steel close by. A young blond boy lies on the ground, blue eyes wide, blood at his lip, staring up at something he cannot escape. A blade catches the firelight as it swings, and the whole world narrows to that one falling edge. Above him looms a red-eyed swordsman, his gaze burning with a cold, inhuman hunger. The boy screams, and the sound tears out of him as everything around him begins to burn. Fire and steel collide across his memory, a nightmare of glowing red and shattering light. A gentle voice cuts through it all, telling him softly, "Remember this well, Arhan." We rewind to a quieter day, a small boy standing before his tall, patient father. Although we may live in this small village far from the capital now, his father says, ruffling his hair beside the family sword. 200 years ago, the Karavan family's status was unmatched by any other house in the land. They had a knight so mighty the whole kingdom called him simply the god of war. His father ruffles his hair, telling of a family chosen by the sword, breeding swordmasters for generations. They were righteous guardians favored by the king and respected by everyone who knew their name. One word carried weight across the kingdom, spoken with reverence and a little fear: Karavan. One day, his father promises, Arhan will take his place and become the head of the Karavan family. You must always live with the pride of the Karavan blood flowing through your veins, his father tells him. And stand tall once more, he adds, as the protector of this land. That above all is the sworn duty of the Karavans. But that was long ago, and the great house now sits far from the capital in a humble farming village. The heroic tales his father used to tell now feel like stories from another life entirely. Older now, Arhan works the golden fields himself, a sickle in hand instead of a legendary sword. A fallen noble family reduced to farming, he figures, is honestly a pretty common thing. If the old glory were real, he reasons, they wouldn't be living in this poor village as landlords. A cheerful servant calls him young master, asking where he should stack the day's harvest. There were always too many holes in his father's grand stories, he thinks, gathering the wheat. Take the founder of the family, that idolized figure everyone painted into the family portrait. An old ancestral sword still hangs on the wall, passed down carefully through the whole bloodline. Even that inherited blade, supposedly forged hundreds of years ago, is somehow far too sharp and intact. Curious, Arhan buried himself in books, hunting for any real trace of his family's legend. Not a single history book in the kingdom even mentions the name of their alleged ancestor, Karavan. He slumps over the pile of tomes, exhausted, admitting he couldn't find it mentioned even once. Considering all of that, he decides, there's really only one logical conclusion to draw. They're just tall tales, made up so proud descendants would have something to feel proud of. A servant snaps him out of his daydream, announcing that it's finally time for their snack break. Another calls out that if he doesn't hurry, all the warm bread will be completely gone. Come later and I'll eat them all myself, one grins, sending Arhan scrambling with a panicked wait up. The workers rest together in the field, laughing over their meal like one big scruffy family. So what if the Karavans aren't really a great family, Arhan thinks, hands on his hips, smiling easily. Truthfully, he loves this place, where he gets to live and laugh alongside these people. This, he decides, is the Karavan he actually wants, warm and plain and entirely his own. He races back across the field toward the others, light on his feet under a wide, open sky. For the first time, the killer's shadow falls across the still water, a dark omen no one in the village yet sees. Or so I thought, his older voice murmurs, as a single drop of blood stains the golden wheat. In my peaceful and complacent state, he says quietly, the blood ripples out across still water. Days later, he says, looks like I've harvested enough for today, loading the cart to head out. So I'm heading to the neighboring town, he tells them brightly, to sell it all at the market. A servant asks him to buy some fruit while he's there, since a young girl's birthday is coming soon. A kind old woman smiles, teasing, "Oh, how did you ever know that, young master?" "I'm going to be the next lord around here," Arhan boasts, "so naturally I know absolutely everything." "I'm off," he calls with a wave, promising to see them all again very soon. He rides out grinning, the whole village waving him off into a burning orange sunset. "You're right," an old servant chuckles. "Our young master really is so different from the other nobles. Come, let's finish the rest of our work." The butler tells them, "We have a regular meeting today." A A young worker laughs warmly about their lord as the last light of day slips away. Then mid-sentence, blood sprays across the sunset and his voice simply stops. The old woman turns, spattered red, her eyes going wide with dawning, unspeakable horror. Huh, she breathes, staring down at the man who was laughing beside her only a heartbeat ago. A scream rises through the wheat as something fast and unseen tears through the golden stalks. A tall figure in dark robes walks slowly through the field, a blade hanging loose in his grip. Two terrified servants back away from the stranger, whispering, Who is that? A single cold eye fixes on them, and the slaughter has only just begun. The intruder moves without pity, dark hair whipping, as his sword finds one victim after another. The old butler is struck down, his face twisted in agony as red light cuts across him. A white-haired servant falls too, blood streaking her face beneath the bleeding sky. She collapses among the wheat, another life extinguished in this endless crimson dusk. In the dark aftermath, a bag of fruit tumbles from someone's hands and rolls across the ground. A single red apple bounces free and rolls to a stop in a spreading pool of shadow. Arhan has come home, and his cart of goods lies scattered among the fallen bodies. His mouth falls open, no sound coming, his mind refusing to accept what his eyes are showing him. Everyone, he whispers into the ruined field. Why is everyone lying here so still? Dead, he chokes out, kneeling among the people who were laughing with him only this morning. Don't look, young master, the weeping butler pleads, pressing the sobbing boy's face gently against his shoulder. The wounded butler drags himself forward, reaching for the boy he swore to protect. Be butler, Arhan stammers, clutching the dying old man as the world comes apart around them. Butler, he sobs again, blood on his hands and apples scattered like a cruel joke across the dirt. Butler, something's wrong, Arhan pleads. I must be seeing things. The villagers, the old man gasps with his last strength, the villagers. He came, the butler breathes, forcing out the truth before his voice can fail completely. Saying that the caravan should be erased, he whispers, and then the killing began. In the butler's memory, the swordsman stands amid the wheat, two villagers fallen at his feet beneath a bleeding sky. The killer had moved through them like a storm, his blade rising and falling without a wasted motion. Wielding his sword with cold indifference, he had cut down everyone the boy loved. A man had appeared without warning, the butler remembers, as the villagers screamed and ran. There had been nowhere to hide, only slaughter under a sky the color of blood. In that short time, the old voice says, he took the lives of half the villagers. The stranger's blade had flashed through the chaos, tearing the little village apart piece by piece. He stood alone amid the wreckage and dust, coldly insisting he was only following his orders. Then, his grim work finished, the dark-haired swordsman turned and melted into the night, and was erased without a trace, leaving only the memory of a butler shielding a laughing child's eyes. By the time it was over, the village was burning, and the man who did it was a swordmaster. A pale moon hangs over restless clouds, and a flag stirs above the grand estate of a house that once mattered. The caravan mansion stands silent and shadowed, its great doors waiting for a horror that has already begun inside. A lone figure walks a blood-streaked hall, and the corpse of a guard tells us the killing has already started. Amidst the terrible, unexpected slaughter, a small boy huddles by a window in the dark, too frightened to move. A butler lies crumpled on the floor, and young Arhan stares in dawning terror at what has been done. The boy's blue eyes go wide and glassy, a gasp caught in his throat as the nightmare closes in around him. Small Arhan collapses among the fallen, hands trembling on cold stone slick with the blood of his household. Then a familiar face leans over him, warm and relieved, and the terror in his chest begins to loosen. A woman cries his name, Arhan, gathering the shaking child up before he can fall apart completely. It is his mother, and she rushes to him through the ruined halls with fear and love warring on her face. "You're safe, my son," she whispers, and Arhan clings to her as though she is the only solid thing left. She holds him tight and sniffles into his hair, murmuring that she is so glad he is still alive. In that moment, the warmth of his mother's embrace brings the boy a fragile, fleeting sense of relief. But her expression hardens, because she knows this quiet is only a pause and the danger has not left. A shape stirs at the far end of the corridor, and the mother's blood runs cold at the sight of him. Arhan turns, breath-catching, as a dread far worse than any grief begins to fill the room. Why, the boy asks the darkness, Why has all of this happened to a family that harmed no one? The killer stands drenched in blood, blade lowered, an unnatural calm radiating off his still frame. Behind a crimson window, the tragedy had spread through every room, and there was nowhere left to run. The intruder was a long-haired swordsman with a single cold red eye, and he didn't harm the boy's parents. Sword planted in the ground, he loomed over the kneeling pair and conveyed only these quiet, chilling words. "Leave this place with everyone by then," he ordered, his cold red gaze burning against the dying light of the sky. The mother seized the planted blade, and her voice cracked as she screamed at him to know why. "Why are you doing this?" she screamed. "What crime did we ever commit to deserve such a thing?" "What?" the swordsman answered flatly, as if her grief and her question were things he could not even understand. His pale face caught the red light, beautiful and empty, a man who felt nothing at all for what he did. "I am just," he began, letting the sentence hang like a blade over the terrified family. He simply looked away into the dark, offering no reason, no mercy beyond this single strange reprieve. After he left behind his incomprehensible words, the swordsman vanished the way a nightmare slips off at dawn. One by one, the surviving villagers gathered what little remained of their shattered, grieving home. In the days that followed, the broken family clung to one another beneath a sky bruised with sorrow. The survivors began to leave the village, because fleeing might have been the only way to save their lives. But Arhan's family wasn't even given that chance, and the father's mind slipped somewhere far away. "I am the great knight who hunts nightmares," the father raved, swearing to the heavens he would never fall. "It is my solemn duty to behead the great evil," he cried, calling his son's name into the empty light. The mother instructed the old butler to prepare a carriage, her decision already made and unshakable. "What are you saying?" Arhan pleaded. "You have to leave too. We all leave together or not at all." "Your father cannot leave this place," she said softly. "His broken mind will not let him go." And as his partner, she whispered, "I will stay beside him until that final, unavoidable moment comes." "Please, let's all go," Arhan begged, reaching for the mother who had already chosen to be left behind. She spoke of the family stories, of the god of war and the ancient swordmasters he had grown up hearing. "They are nothing more than history filled with lies," she told him, "so live free of that cursed legend." "So won't you make a promise to your mother?" she asked, holding his frightened gaze in the moonlight. "Promise me you'll never pick up a sword in your life," she said, cupping his face with trembling hands. "Just live for yourself," she breathed, pressing a last kiss of a wish into her only child. "Lady, the carriage is ready," the old butler called, and Arhan's whole world began to pull apart. "Butler, please, take good care of Arhan," she said. "Get him as far away as possible before that day." "Yes, my lady," the loyal old butler answered, bowing low even as his own heart broke in two. "And no, mother," Arhan screamed, straining against the arms that dragged him toward the waiting carriage. "Mother," he cried again, but she only turned her face away so he would not see her weep. "You must go, young master," the butler urged, hauling the wailing boy back as he reached out one last time. "Mathir," Arhan howled into the night, his small hand grasping at a figure growing smaller by the second. "I love you, my child," she whispered to the dark, standing alone beneath the cold and distant stars. A door closed, a light narrowed to a sliver, and the last warmth of home was sealed away behind him. Inside the rocking carriage, Arhan wept, his face streaked and hollow, too young to carry this much loss. "Don't keep suffering alone, dear," an old memory of his mother seemed to say among the family's dusty books. The ancient ancestral sword gleamed on its stand, sharp and untouched, waiting through 200 years. The carriage rattled down a forest road by lantern light, the old butler steady at the reins. "Young master, I know this is incredibly painful and devastating," the butler said, "but you must endure. He is a natural disaster that humans like us cannot possibly overcome, so accept this tragedy for what it is." The old man's weathered hands gripped the reins, guiding the horses onward through the smothering dark. "The lord and lady would surely have wanted you to keep living," the butler pleaded, "please, for their sake. So you can live on," he begged over his shoulder, and then he felt the carriage suddenly lighten behind him. Arhan had made his choice, gripping the wooden frame. No matter how he thought about it, he could not run. He leapt from the moving carriage into the dark, the butler crying out how could he just do this. "Leave my parents behind like this," the boy thought, jaw set, the tears finally hardening into resolve. He would not just run away by himself, and somewhere the whispered legend of a swordmaster stirred in him. He seized a hunting crossbow, thinking, like us, he is a man who will die if an arrow pierces his heart. If I can just shoot him with this, the boy told himself, then I can protect the ones I have left. A blood-red sky hung over the mansion flag, as Arhan crept back toward the monster who had spared him. His young face was pale and set, wide eyes fixed on a single desperate, impossible chance at revenge. But a single red eye snapped open in the shadows, already aware of the small hunter creeping closer. The swordsman smiled faintly, blood on his lips, unbothered by the child who dared to stalk him. Bold move, kid, bringing a crossbow to a swordmaster fight, though you can't fault the raw ambition. The dark flag snapped over the mansion, as the confrontation the boy had chosen finally arrived. In the hall, Arhan crept past a fallen body, terrified, come at last to embrace death after all. The swordsman's long robes trailed across the floor as he turned toward the trembling intruder. I showed you mercy, yet, he murmured, his red eye narrowing at the child who had thrown it away. Ah, Arhan choked, raw fear and rage tearing out of him as he faced the killer alone. Ah, he screamed, the sound swallowed by the vast dark of the ruined and silent house. The cry died in his throat, and for a heartbeat the boy simply shook, small against a giant. Ah, Arhan roared, all his grief pouring into one wild moment of defiance against the impossible. I'll kill you, he screamed, hauling the crossbow up with shaking arms and a heart full of vengeance. Die, he cried, and loosed the bolt straight at the swordsman's chest with everything he had. The shot streaked through the gloom, a desperate child's prayer riding on a single wooden shaft. But the blow was answered in an instant, steel flashing, and the boy's small body was struck down hard. Under the blood-red sky, Arhan lay broken on the ground, while the swordsman stood untouched above him. The spent crossbow tumbled from his fingers, useless, the whole gamble collapsing in a single breath. The dark figure advanced through the ruins, unhurried, as the wounded boy gasped in the dirt. Gah, Arhan wheezed, and the swordsman noted with faint interest that he wasn't even 18 yet. The boy knelt shattered at the killer's feet, blade planted in the earth beside his bowed head. The swordsman raised his weapon over the fallen child, a black silhouette against the burning horizon. Not a single trace of Karavan's will can remain on this continent, he declared with cold finality. And if you dare to continue that bloodline, he warned, teeth bared, then no mercy will be left. You again, he sighed at the stubborn boy, his single red eye glowing in the ashen dark. Karavan, he breathed like a curse, weighing whether he should simply end this doomed and defiant child. But he only turned and walked away, leaving Arhan sprawled and bleeding on the cold, empty ground. The boy lifted his ruined face, tears and blood streaking down, refusing to let the dark take him. His trembling hand pressed flat against the stone, clinging to a life he had every reason to surrender. So utterly pathetic, the swordsman murmured, glancing back at the broken air he had chosen to spare. Ugh, Arhan groaned, dragging himself upright with nothing left but the stubborn will to keep breathing. The killer's silhouette receded down the ruined path, a nightmare walking calmly back into the night. Then something shifted, a blue and ghostly light rising from the ancient sword the boy had always known. The ancestral blade blazed cold and brilliant, its 200-year sleep finally coming to an end. The empty dark filled with drifting azure fire, and Arhan realized his story was far from finished. Arhan Karavan, show some respect, a deep voice commanded from within the surging blue flame. The light gathered and swelled, wrapping the fallen boy in the awakening power of his own bloodline. A great presence took shape from the glow, ancient and vast, answering the desperate call of its heir. My descendant, the figure said, and the legendary god of war, Liam Karavan, opened his eyes at last. The old family legend was no lie after all, and the blazing ancestral sword answered Arhan's grief with a promise. Moonlight falls over the silent Karavan estate, the manor Arhan once called home now hollow with loss. They called the man a guardian who protected the kingdom's peace, a righteous sentinel who eradicated evil, a superhuman with the most brilliant talent even among swordmasters, known to all as Carlos, wielder of the 10 swords. It was the name and the fame of the very man who took everything from me. He killed my family, and now the question burns. Who is truly behind all of this, and what secrets does Karavan even hold? Scattered documents cover the desk, Every page another thread in a conspiracy Arhan cannot yet unravel. However, through all the grief and confusion, one thing has become perfectly clear to him. The lives of all the caravan members who died in vain will never return, no matter how hard he wishes. Alone in the vast hall, Arhan stands beneath the towering emptiness of his family's legacy. Then the blond young heir freezes, his blue eyes going wide at something impossible before him. A radiant sword materializes out of thin air, its blade humming with otherworldly blue light. Something unbelievable has appeared before me, glowing brighter than anything I have ever seen. A voice booms from the light, demanding he show some respect to whoever stands within it. The glow resolves into a broad, bearded figure who addresses Arhan simply as his descendant. But there he was, my ancestor stepped straight out of the legends and the family portrait. The apparition of the sword lingers in the air, proof that this vision is anything but ordinary. The ancestor notes he has heard of something like this before, a phenomenon striking those who suffered severe mental shock. For some reason, those who have endured such trauma often experience vivid hallucinations. I sense your wavering, the glowing elder tells him, reading the doubt written across the boy's face. Afraid you've truly gone mad? Or is it that an ancestor you dismissed as a mere legend now stands here, has appeared before you, leaving you utterly stunned? The old man teases as Arhan sweats in disbelief. An illusion but reality, Arhan whispers, then dares to ask if this is truly the founder of their family. The strongest swordmaster in history, Karavan himself, the man whose name shaped an entire bloodline. If you truly are him, Arhan presses, then why are you only appearing before me now after everything? Right now, the ancestor snaps, his patience with the boy's stubborn questions wearing visibly thin. This time, Arhan grits his teeth, his blue eyes blazing with fresh determination and demand. Karavan folds his arms, regarding his descendant with the calm authority of a man who founded a dynasty. Because I needed to test you for myself, the ancestor answers, and see what you are truly made of. Despite your pathetic, hopeless talent, which you yourself must recognize, there is something worth watching in you. Seen from above, Arhan lies crumpled among shattered training posts, worn down by relentless practice in the crimson gloom. Your obsession to never let go of your sword, not even for a single day, has not gone unnoticed. And yet in this darkest moment, you wavered, the ancestor observes of the boy's cracking resolve. You ask why I've only appeared now. The answer to that is simple, Liam tells him across the dim hall. Because the hatred in your eyes has finally reached the depth I desired for what comes next. A shadowed figure looms in red, the memory of the man who slaughtered Arhan's people burned into his mind. Throughout the history of this continent, there is a fact that has never once been disproven. That you swing your sword with such stubbornness, vowing revenge, no doubt, is exactly what he counted on. But if you're on your own, you could train for a lifetime and never reach him, Liam warns gravely. A swordmaster is a transcendent existence beyond the limits of humanity, a level so-called geniuses can never hope to reach. A lone silhouette stands against a boundless sky, showing just how far above mortals that summit truly sits. And as time passes, he will only grow further beyond reach, the rain falling cold over the estate. Arhan listens, jaw tight, the weight of an impossible gap settling onto his young shoulders. I know full well how vast the gap between us is, Arhan says, but you're saying it's beyond difficult, impossible. Everything from me has become a hero's dream, and now I'm once again left utterly powerless. Not so, the ancestor replies, glowing beneath the family crest, because I am going to help you. And as a member of Caravan, you can judge that murderer and deliver the justice he deserves. There is only one path that a caravan can take, the ancestor says, holding up a gleaming blade. Eat my sword, Liam commands, and Arhan can only stare, certain he has misheard the legend. The blond boy's eyes go wide, utterly baffled by the strangest instruction anyone has ever given him. Around them, a great armory of blades stands ranked in the flickering light, waiting. One sword flares with molten fire, its steel glowing as if alive and hungry to be claimed. The ancestor explains that the caravan bloodline is a mix of human and dwarven blood, older than the legends admit. Arhan's face tightens, sharp teeth bared as the impossible truth of his heritage sinks in. Fire and shadow swirl around the young heir as power stirs somewhere deep in his blood. It all began with me. A half-dwarf, the ancestor confesses, revealing the secret root of their family's might. Bathed in ember light, Liam stands beside his descendant, generations bridged in a single glowing moment. The physical traits of the dwarves may not be apparent, but within their blood lies a special ability passed to their descendants. That ability is the power to consume swords, and by doing so make the memories and skills of the wielder your own. The source of our power that made us such a great family, the ancestor declares before a field of planted blades. Arhan's eyes narrow as the full meaning lands, inheriting power by eating swords themselves. It all seems so absurd, he thinks, having never once heard of such a bizarre ability in any story. However, the truth can only be proven by results, the ancestor reminds him, and results demand action. I don't have the luxury to hesitate, Arhan resolves. Tell me how to consume the sword. His breath quickens, a bead of sweat tracing his cheek as he steels himself for the impossible. Heat the blade until the steel is soft enough, the ancestor instructs, the sword glowing white-hot before him. And then swallow it, Liam says, as flame licks up the length of the molten blade. Arhan's red-tinged eye trembles and a dark thought creeps in. Maybe I've truly gone mad. Maybe I'm being led astray by a mere phantom. He wonders, but even so, what choice remains? His glowing eyes harden with fury and resolve. If there's even a sliver of a chance, he will take it. I'll do it, Arhan roars, throwing his head back to swallow the burning blade whole. Fire and steel crash together as the impossible act begins. No going back now. Sparks erupt in a searing blaze, the molten metal forcing its way past his lips. The blade glows white inside a mouth ringed with flame, the heat unimaginable. His hand claws at the scorching air, fingers trembling against the agony coursing through him. Engulfed in fire, Arhan screams, his whole body racked by the burning power he has swallowed. Blood and flame pour from his throat, as the raw torment tears a howl from his chest. His silhouette blazes against the dark, a single figure consumed in a pillar of screaming fire. The molten blade shatters into sparks, its power detonating through his convulsing frame. The blond boy staggers, gasping a broken og as the fire rips deeper into his body. His whole body cracks like shattering stone, and he cries out again in unbearable pain. He chokes, barely clinging to consciousness as the transformation threatens to break him apart. Sweat-drenched and shaking, Arhan lifts his head, refusing to let the pain win. One eye blazes pale and cracked with power, a swordmaster's spark igniting behind the agony. Remember, a voice echoes through the fire, remember, calling him back from the edge of collapse. Trembling, he reaches out a scorched hand toward the light, grasping for the strength to endure. The fire surges around his outstretched fingers, power and pain fused into a single searing moment. Sparks rain down through the crimson dark as the storm inside him reaches its peak. A blinding shard of light splits the gloom, the blade reforged now as part of him. I will become one, he vows through the flames, even if it costs me my life, I will become one. I will become one, Arhan swears, his eyes burning with a swordmaster's resolve at last. This is only the beginning. Morning light breaks over the ruined caravan estate, and a raw scream tears out of Arhan as the transformation still burns through him. He staggers up, teeth bared, breath ragged, a blade still clutched in his shaking hand. His blue eyes snap wide, chest heaving, and one certainty cuts through the pain: I'm alive. Not just alive, and not a single wound on him, though he vividly recalls the agony of chewing and swallowing that white-hot steel. He almost thought yesterday had all been a fevered dream, a mercy his memory refuses to grant. If it truly happened, there'd be no reason for only the hilt of the devoured sword to remain. Then a voice answers, and unlike his hopelessly weak body, the proof is standing right there before him. The glowing apparition of Liam Karavan returns, warning that even among his ancestors some could not withstand the searing pain. And more than a few simply gave up, the old Swordmaster says before asking, "Do you believe my story now?" Every legend the knights and his father ever told him about this bearded giant, all of it was true. And I am no mere hallucination of yours, Liam insists, as Arhan stares back in stunned silence. Arhan's mouth opens, but only a speechless ellipsis comes out, the mind still catching up to the impossible. He steadies himself and finally speaks his own name aloud. I, Arhan Karavan. He rises tall in the cold ruins, ready to accept the ancestor's power and everything that comes with it. Then call me master, young descendant, the spirit says with a knowing glint in his eye. Every ancestor who received Liam's teachings addressed him this way, and Arhan bows his head. I understand, master. He asks it plainly. Last night, you said swallowing the blade would let me gain power. I've inherited your great strength, master. The old swordmaster smiles faintly, but Arhan frowns. However, I don't feel like much has changed inside me. Liam's spirit flinches, caught off guard, as Arhan kneels and points out the obvious gap between promise and result. The ancestor coughs, admitting there's been a bit of a problem, and to be precise, it's a problem on your part, not mine. You mean, Arhan starts, as Liam explains his original plan was to have the boy eat his own beloved sword. That single devoured blade would have raised Arhan straight to the level of a true swordmaster. But the essence of that legendary sword spins away in a whirlwind of blue light, impossible for you to fully digest, the master warns. Arhan's eyes go wide, question and shock written all over his face as the power slips beyond his reach. He kneels alone in the shadowed hall, the weight of the setback pressing down on his shoulders. After a long silence, he simply says, I see, and Liam presses, is that all you have to say? The old master studies him, half expecting despair, but the boy has already made his peace. I was already aware of my body's weakness, Arhan admits, and although I'm disappointed with the result, I'm simply grateful that another path remains open for me, he says, and Liam asks, what do you mean? You said it was impossible in my current state, meaning someday I'll be able to handle your power, so I should start with a sword I can handle. The ancestor's eye gleams as the logic lands. Doesn't that mean I only need to find one? You already have the intuition of a swordmaster, Liam confirms, and the more worn and well-handled the sword, the better. Arhan bows his head in the ruins, a plan already forming in that cold, calculating mind. Guide me to a place where old, shabby weapons are abundant, he says, as dawn burns red across the broken land. There is a place for you, the master answers, and a lone figure sets out across the crimson wilderness. Before him rises a vast graveyard of shattered steel, mountains of ruined arms swallowed in mist. The master and the boy stand together at its edge, and Arhan smirks. I bet the necromancers would love it here. All the old things from the slums are gathered here, from worthless scrap metal to unusable weapons. If even a single sword suits his devouring taste, that alone would be a good start. Swords clutched by dead soldiers, axes caked in mud and blood litter the endless field. Spears with broken shafts roll across the ground, relics of countless slaughters, and so on. With all my might, I ate and ate, Arhan recalls, jaw set, eyes hollow with grim resolve. Somehow this place reminds him of those days, the master's spirit watching over the endless feast. To guard the spark of life, he swallowed blade after blade even as his body kept fracturing. Some died the same day, others lived to see tomorrow. Those days themselves were a battlefield, a war fought not with an enemy but with his own breaking body. Then a single point of light streaks up through the ruins, sharp and undeniable in the dark. The old swordmaster's eyes glow. I've found it, take that one, my young descendant. His ghostly hand points down at the waiting boy. That is the one you must devour. A slender blade hangs suspended in the light, gleaming, Arhan's second sword. Time shifts, and moonlight spills over a silent, abandoned village clinging to a cliffside. Rows of empty houses stand dark below. There's not a single presence here, not even in the village. Boots move quietly down a shadowed corridor, footsteps echoing in the hush. Maybe a warlock once ran some grim experiment on living beings behind these walls, one voice muses. It's probably just a fallen noble hiding out here, another guesses, as shadowy figures prowl the hall. Doesn't it reek of the smell of the rich? One sneers, eyeing the fine furnishings still standing. Two grinning brutes lounge like kings. Our luck's finally turned. This job's gonna be a piece of cake. Looks like a noble's family really once lived here, one thug notes, licking his lips at the score. There's a whole pile of fine ladies' clothes, freshly laundered, another crows what for real. A scarred bandit buries his face in a stolen dress. The scent on these clothes really is different. He hauls the fine dress high, drinking in its scent, his grin widening in the gloom of the looted house. Kekek, if we play our cards right, one leers, mind already sliding somewhere ugly. We might also be able to have another kind of fun. He adds, hey, Let me get a sniff of that noble lady's scent too. Stop, a cold voice cuts in, and the whole rotten crew turns toward the sound. A lone silhouette stands in the doorway, still and unbothered by the crowd of armed men. My mother liked things to be tidy, Arhan says quietly, stepping out of the dark. His shadowed face lifts, cold and composed, and let's have a conversation. The thugs howl with laughter. Who's this kid? The son of the mansion's owner, so it's not a woman. Did you come here to seek food, or simply a place to stay? Arhan asks. If it's one of the two, say it. I'm willing to accept you as guests if it's for one of those reasons, he offers, calm as still water. What are you yapping about, brat? Have you lost your mind? A bald brute snarls, rising from his seat. You damn nobles must not have common sense. Another spits, blade catching the light. You should have just stayed hidden and quiet. Why the hell did you crawl out and make a fuss? Arhan's blue eye narrows to a razor's edge, utterly unafraid of the men closing in. A slash streaks across that calm face, first blood drawn, but the eyes never so much as flinch. Are you that eager to die? A thug roars, driving his weapon toward the boy. Steel flashes, and Arhan answers with the faintest, chilling smile, blade already moving. His eye ignites molten gold and slit like a beast's, the ancestor's power finally waking in full. A crescent of pink light rips through the room, and the bandits are flung like broken dolls. A survivor gapes through his own scream. So you were intruders after all, the truth arriving far too late. Not guests, Arhan finishes softly, blood spraying, his glowing eyes cold as the grave he just dug them. A fire crackles low in the ruined dark, and the word for devouring hangs in the smoke. Arhan kneels before the flames beside his master's glow, and softly names him again. Liam studies the slender blade, and asks if this thin thing is really the sword he was meant to eat. Arhan lifts it into the firelight, calling it less a sword and more a needle. He turns it in his fingers, saying it feels like it would snap the moment he tried to cut anything. The ancestor floats over the workshop floor, unbothered by the young heir's skepticism. Arhan's blue eye narrows, as Liam explains the blade was never meant for slashing his foes. The old master leans close, insisting it is a weapon forged for a single purpose. In a decisive battle, he says, where life and death hang in the balance, it is meant for piercing through an enemy's vital points to end their life. A shadowed figure lunges forward, the thin blade flashing in a single deadly thrust. A sword, Liam says, that is meant only to thrust. Arhan holds it upright, unimpressed, wondering if thrusting is truly all it can do. Liam smirks, reading the boy's face, teasing that he thinks a sturdy spear would suit him better. The master admits the question is not without merit, the fire dancing behind him. But the memories dwelling within that sword, he says, are the most useful thing for such a weak body. For your information, its previous owner alone had pierced the lives of over 1,000 enemies. Arhan raises the blade toward the dark, listening to the weight of that number. Therefore, the ancestor commands, treat that sword with the respect it deserves. Embers drift over the ruined stone, as Liam tells him to consume it with gratitude. The weight of its sins may be light, he murmurs, a single spark clinging to the tip. Yet what dwells within it is immeasurably heavy and solemn, the flames roaring higher. Arhan stands alone in the vast hall, told there is much for him to gain here. The memory opens on cracked ground glowing beneath a spreading fire. A lone house burns against the night, flames climbing its wooden walls. A small red-haired girl opens her eyes in the wreckage as a voice asks if she is awake. Her parents had been reduced to ashes in the inferno, their forms left unrecognizable. Barely 10 years old, the child whispered softly amid the smoke and ruin. In a strange bed, she confesses, she wished she had died with them. She was taken to an orphanage that worshipped a so-called goddess of fire. There she learned it was a place that considered fire itself to be salvation. The child who had lost everything to fire now had to live somewhere that called it holy. Even here, she still had not escaped the flames that scarred her. The chapel glowed horribly peaceful, its congregation kneeling beneath the light. The other children stared at the burned side of her face and whispered. They sneered that her scarred face was surely a mark of the goddess's curse. Alone and mocked, she heard them call her horrible again and again. Covering her face, her single red eye wet, the girl whispered that she wanted to die. She dreamed of escaping the fire she saw every time she closed her eyes. Then one night, a slender blade gleamed under the moonlight in the dark forest. Until that day came, she says, her scarred face turned toward something new. A thin sword hung against the moon, cold and beautiful in the night sky. Looking back, she admits, the man's swordsmanship was nothing but rough and crude. The blade fell in a clumsy arc, a distant figure watching from below. Still, it possessed a beauty more than enough to make her forget everything. For that one moment, it drove out the hell that filled her mind. He was an old swordsman, a former wandering knight who had worked at the orphanage a long time. His name, she tells us, was Heckle, the old wandering knight. Normally, she would never have dared say a single word to such a man. But she crept toward the aging knight, where he trained alone among the trees. Clutching her scarred cheek, she asked him how she could become like him, sir. With that question, she took her first step toward learning the blade. Heckle frowned, wary of teaching a scarred girl the way of the sword. He warned her that a blade like this would only end up hurting a girl like her. So please, he told her, go back now before it wounds you. But the girl gripped tight, refusing to let the moment slip away from her. There is no fire in this world, she thought, that would ever scare me again. A blade sang through the night air over the moonlit ground. It cut a shining path against the deep blue dark. A barrel of blades rings as it is set down, the swords waiting for her to choose among them. Heckle gestured to a rack of blades, telling her to choose one right here. The girl stared at the swords resting in the barrel, silent and searching. If you can do so much as swing it, the knight said, then I will teach you. A single finger tapped the flat of a blade, testing her resolve. She lifted the slender sword, declaring that as long as she can fight back it is enough. The thin blade flicked out and knocked a training dummy flat in one motion. The old knight watched, his stern face slowly shifting toward something like respect. Her golden eye burning, she vowed she would become whatever she needed to be. The memory tears away, and Arhan's cold eyes cut through a spray of blood in the present. So you were intruders, he says to the looters, not guests after all. A hulking bandit staggers with a strangled grunt as the crescent light passes through him. The man crumples to the floor, cut down in a single silent stroke. 3 intruders stand frozen in the distance as Arhan turns, blood already streaking the stone floor around them. A survivor stares wide-eyed, stammering that this cannot be real. Sweating and shaking, he begs the boy to tell him this is some kind of joke. Arhan lowers the needle-thin sword, saying there is no need for conversation at this point. In the quiet aftermath, the glowing ancestor drifts through the doorway toward him. Arms folded, Liam remarks that for the past month he has taught his young descendant only one thing: a physical training method to draw out that power, and no true swordsmanship at all. And yet the old master marvels, the fact that a thrust like that is possible. Arhan's hand tightens on the hilt, the borrowed memory alive in his grip. Blade raised in the pale light, this thrust marks his first true step as a caravan. The bandit's eyes go blank the instant the needle slips home, blood pooling beneath a single flawless wound. He crumbles to the floor choking, the thrust having threaded precisely between his ribs and into the lungs. Arhan stands over the body, and Liam marvels that a boy with no skill or experience could land such a perfect strike. The answer, the spirit says, lies in the owner of the needle Arhan devoured only a month ago. The blade begins to glow, and the world dissolves into Mary's memories once more. We return to the red-haired girl, her burned scars catching the firelight, her golden eyes hard with resolve. Heckle, the old wandering knight, taught her many things in that quiet orphanage clearing. He taught her how to hold a sword, how to fight, and above all how to survive. It was never a neat, systematically established theory, just hard truth passed hand to hand. As a wandering knight, Heckle had gathered his wisdom the long and bloody way. And for a girl who had feared fire her whole life, his teaching was beautiful beyond compare. He stood tall in the falling snow, arms crossed, a rare warmth beneath the frost. His swordsmanship carried a quiet toughness, unshowy yet impossible to look away from. Mary looked up at him with color rising in her cheeks, something like hope waking in her. She called it her heart's true home, and she loved it with everything she had. And a few years later, the seasons turned and the small girl grew. In a dim room, Heckle lay frail in bed, warning Mary that one day she must leave this place. His trembling hand reached out as he spoke of the last thing he would ever leave her. This was his final lesson, and he was glad she stood beside him at the end of his journey. He whispered her name, Mary, and her golden eyes brimmed as she leaned close. Her fingers closed around his, and she thanked him softly for everything he had given. Later she knelt in the empty room and murmured for him to rest in peace, Heckle. The needle sword hangs alone as Mary's voice recalls leaving the orphanage and stepping into the wider world. Before long, she had cut a name for herself as a fairly well-known mercenary. Perhaps because she was a young woman, a rarity in that brutal line of work, people gave her a title. She rolls a small orb between her fingers in the dark woods, thin as a needle in the tales they told. Blade raised, the red-haired mercenary stalks a lone figure through the misted trees. Tears slide down Arhan's face as the devoured memory floods his mind, the very digestion his master had spoken of. The memory snaps back, and a fallen man begs from the ground for mercy, pleading to be spared just once. Arhan's hand tightens on the slender needle, the blade whistling as it lifts. The steel drives down with a wet thud, ending the man where he lies. Arhan grips the hilt and finishes it cleanly, just as Liam told him to. Blood streaks across the blade as the boy turns, his blue eyes cold and clear. He kneels amid the fallen, needle in hand, and quietly notes that this is his first kill. The first time, and yet he feels no emotion at all, only stillness. All he sees before him is what remains, bodies scattered across the cold stone floor. A weeping survivor screams, and Arhan realizes he found his opening only because that man underestimated him. Now that he is outnumbered, he cannot expect the same easy luck, and the remaining bandits know it too. They still hold an advantage in numbers, edging forward through the wrecked hall. One roars and lunges, desperate to close the distance before the boy can strike. An older bandit hangs back, studying Arhan with wary, calculating eyes. The boy has just shown a poise no beginner should have, and it unnerves them. Liam's teaching echoes that a moderate fear helps one survive, but excessive fear clouds judgment. Panic makes the enemy loom larger, and it tricks men into believing they face something far mightier. Right now, in their frightened eyes, Arhan is probably something monstrous. A murderous fiend skilled with the blade, bathed in red light and dread. Is that so? The boy muses coldly. Then in that case he will simply become the nightmare they imagine. The needle flashes, carving a bright arc through the gloom. A bandit reels back as the blade grazes past, the others frozen in alarm. Arhan bares his teeth in a wolfish grin, and the men scream at him not to come any closer. One levels a spear with shaking arms and vows through his terror to kill the boy. But Arhan is already gone, a blur slipping through the darkness. The spearman curses the cunning bastard as the boy drops on him from nowhere. Arhan's eyes glint calm and merciless in the half-light. A tear rolls down a doomed man's face as the needle finds its mark. The blade punches clean through, and the boy stands untouched at the center of the carnage. Blood sprays in a thin, red ribbon across the dark. His single blue eye burns bright and unblinking amid the ruin. A crimson orb drips from the needle's tip, and Mary's voice returns, recalling what Heckle said. Strength and stamina would never be on her side, the old knight had warned. A large enemy howls and charges, dwarfing the slender fighter before him. The needle blade slides between them, thin and unhurried as a whisper. In the memory, Mary twists low beneath a wild swing, her sword poised to answer. Therefore, on the first attack or the second at the latest, she must end it. She spins through the air, hair whipping, the killing thrust already chosen. The point drives into the giant's throat, and his eyes fly wide in shock. He chokes out a strangled gasp, the wound far deeper than his size could save him from. His scream tears the air apart as he falls. Pierce the enemy, Heckle's words ring, as Mary buries the blade to the hilt. Do not try to fill what you lack, he told her, but make the strikes you do have shine. The huge man crashes to the ground, undone by one perfect thrust. Another foe rushes in snarling, refusing to learn from his comrade's fate. Her natural flexibility, a body like a dancer's, lets her strike from impossible lines. Yes, from any posture at all, Heckle confirmed, her limbs bending where others break. From any angle, a wide, terrified eye realizes too late where the point is aimed. Mary drops through the air upside down, the needle leading her fall. The blade streaks in with a hiss, unstoppable and precise. A man's face fills with dawning horror as the tip closes on him. The needle plunges home, a jagged red flash splitting the darkness. The bandit's mouth stretches in a soundless roar, and Arhan can aim for the enemy's very life. One eye rolls back white, blood spilling from his slackening jaw. His body shudders and drops, the last light draining from him. Arhan stands alone in the hall, a small figure amid a floor of the dead. The final survivor stares at the needle in disbelief, stammering about what the hell just happened. That murderous fiend, he thinks, backlit and small, the boy's eye glowing like a coal. What in the world is he? The man screams as Arhan's silhouette burns against the red. Under a cold moon, steel rings out through the trees as Arhan trains without rest. From high above, a lone figure darts through the dark canopy, blade flashing in motion. Liam watches his young student and asks if he will finally cast away his doubt. Arhan swings his sword all day long without ever losing his breath, endlessly refining each strike. The master reminds him that opponents like these he can already handle easily on his own. Then even 4 untrained thugs, amid a life-or-death battle, become no true threat to him. Arhan flexes his hand and admits that everything his master told him was true. Becoming as flexible as a dancer reacting to the memories inside the sword, Mary's recollections grow clearer. And now, Arhan says, he understands just a little of what she carried within her. He glimpses what it was like for Mary to fight against the whole cruel world alone. Arhan wonders quietly if this is truly the power his master once spoke of. A blade blazes with fire as Liam names it, the power of digestion at work. Liam tells his young descendant that when it comes to the sword, he never lies. He promises the boy that the days ahead will be painful, a long series of brutal trials. Trials so harsh, blood streaking through the air, that today's hardship will feel like a blessing. Even after hearing all this, the master asks, "Will you still walk down this road?" If it means one day pointing my sword at that man's throat, Arhan thinks, then yes. Eyes burning with resolve, Arhan swears he will walk this path no matter where it leads. Then something shifts, and the boy's expression falters as he softly calls out, "Master." Arhan gasps in shock, staring up and asking if this path is truly the one. Standing atop a barren cliff, Liam turns to him and asks, "The right way?" An eagle wheels over a lonely mountain peak as the 2 figures climb toward the summit. Perched on the cliff's edge, Arhan mutters back in disbelief, "Really?" Liam remarks they will need to work on that troublesome trait of his at some point. Sweating and wide-eyed, Arhan waits as the old master decides to answer his question. The path of a swordsman, Liam explains, is broadly divided into 5 distinct stages. It begins with the sword beginner, the very first step onto the long road ahead. Those with real talent reach the realm of sword walker, turning the tide of battle alone. A warrior strides forward as the ranks climb higher toward mastery of the blade. And reigning above all other swordsmen stands one revered as a god itself. Armored knights kneel in golden light before that towering, legendary figure of war. That pinnacle is achieving the mind sword, the height known as the Swordmaster. Liam presses him, "So answer me, young descendant, where do you think you belong?" Grinning through his sweat, Arhan says he's sure the master wants a bold answer. But he knows his own level well, and the prerequisite to becoming a swordmaster is wielding mana. To wield mana, one needs a vessel to store it, a second heart, but Arhan hasn't formed one yet. So he believes he doesn't even qualify as a beginner, and Liam calls him very self-aware. This training, the master says, is meant to guide a novice like him onto the beginner's path. Liam declares plainly that Arhan can form a mana heart, and the boy stares. "What? You mean?" Arhan sputters. "I'm going through all this risk right now just to form a mana heart." Clinging to the sheer rock face, the young heir dangles high above the deadly drop. The master says he could just drink an alchemist's potion, but there are other ways too. Or have a walker-level knight infuse him with mana to awaken his senses and form a heart. That is how even noble ladies who study swordsmanship for self-defense can easily form one. Arhan grumbles that there are such easy paths, so why must they stick to this brutal method? Panting against the cliff, he insists forming a mana heart this way shouldn't be so difficult. However, Liam answers, the blood of the caravans is imbued with the unyielding power of steel. To wield that mighty power, an equally tough vessel is needed, not a merely human one. If Arhan wishes to reach a swordmaster's level, there is only one thing he must have: a radiant heart of steel, forged to hold the ferocious might of the caravan bloodline. There is only one way to forge such a heart, the old man says, eyes narrowing. To make his body feel the need for a mana heart, Arhan must push himself to the brink of death. Of all the caravan descendants, Liam admits, very few have ever completed this training to the end. A trembling hand grips the stone, showing just how painful and terrible the whole process is. However, those who endured it all the way to the very end reaped an extraordinary reward. They became swordmasters, the rare few who conquered the trial of the steel heart. So Liam grins and asks, "How about it, young descendant? Are you feeling a little motivated?" Arhan's straining hand reaches for the next hold, muscles quivering against the merciless climb. Drenched and exhausted, the boy hauls himself upward, refusing to let the mountain beat him. "You will not die when it comes to the sword, descendant," the master promises with a warm smile. "The mana heart you create," Liam says, "will be unlike any other," and Arhan grins fiercely. Sunlight spills over the cliff, as the master vows it will be different from anyone else in this world. Time passes, and a full moon drifts high over silent clouds as the training presses on. Far away in the Verdi region lies the eastern village of Campbell, quiet beneath the night. In a dim tavern, one traveler leans in and asks another, "Have you heard that strange rumor?" The rumor concerns the village to the west, the place they call Karavan. "A blade," they whisper, "has been going around lately, and something in that western village feels wrong." "Whatever it is," the man mutters, "it seems to be a genuinely dangerous being. So if you don't want to die, the warning goes, do not ever set foot in the western village." At a shadowed table nearby, a cloaked, hooded stranger sits silent, listening to every word. A single scarred hand rests on the table, as the tale names it a village where you'll die if you enter. Beneath the hood, a bearded jaw tightens, the stranger's interest quietly, dangerously piqued. Then the hooded figure rises and walks off into the candle-lit gloom, drawn toward Caravan. The lone tree crowns the barren mountain, and Arhan starts holding onto the cliff with only his left hand. Even on the days when he was completely drained, he clawed his way up amid the terrible muscle pain of training. Even when it was a struggle just to lift his arm, he went through all of it without missing a single day. Bloodied and gasping, he dragged himself up the sheer rock with all his might. His trembling fingers close over the stone, one grip at a time, refusing to let go. He hoped some miracle would come from all this suffering, but unfortunately, it did not. Standing in the cold blue forest, Arhan lets out a tired sigh over hands that still feel ordinary. However, something beneath the surface was quietly beginning to shift inside him. His blue eyes sharpen with a grin as he feels it. A change is clearly taking place. One of those changes stirs like a dark orb of power, waking somewhere deep within. It is not just his five senses, including his sight and his hearing, that have grown sharper. A blade whips through the air, and now his eyes track every gleaming inch of its arc. He darts down the corridor with fluid, weightless steps that his old body never could have managed. A roaring opponent swings for him, and Arhan reads the strike before it even lands. Steel screams past his cheek as he slips around it with impossible precision. It is also his judgment and his concentration in dealing with dangerous situations. His mind has become clearer, faster, sharper than the boy he used to be. He twists his whole body through the swirl of blades without a wasted motion. It has grown to a point where it is simply incomparable to what it was before. And every single time he takes up the needle to train, that difference reveals itself. When he focuses everything he has onto a single point, the world begins to change. The red-haired sparring foe screams and lunges, but for just a brief moment, everything slows. Arhan drops through the air toward his enemy, weapon poised, as the scene hangs frozen. It felt as if time itself had stopped, except for him alone. In that silent pocket of stillness, his focus narrows to a single glowing point. The world had stopped, and Arhan moved freely through it while everyone else stood still. He closes the distance and strikes clean, a shadow slipping past a helpless guard. Beads of blood scatter through the air as his blade finds its mark. His cold blue eye watches the red droplets fall, calm in the heart of the chaos. The red-haired man reels back, roaring, caught in an assault he never saw coming. The needle flickers, and the sparring foe crumbles under the weight of Arhan's speed. Between all these changes, Arhan understands, the reason for them is just one thing. It is the simple fact that he can now feel mana coursing quietly around him. The lone needle rests against the cold stone, humming with a faint new presence. In the moonlit forest of blades, that faint thread of mana curls up from the steel. To have achieved this when he has not even formed a mana heart or become a sword beginner. It is all possible thanks to the power of the needle, but it remains an astonishing fact. Bathed in a soft glow of mana, Arhan turns his eyes upward and speaks, "Master." Just what kind of power will he possess when he finally reaches the next level? Liam smirks that to be impressed by something so trivial means Arhan still has a long way to go. Only then, the old master says, will Arhan and the owner of the needle stand on equal footing. And if he takes one more step forward through the path emitted from the mana heart, he will enhance his physical abilities and construct a domain, reaching the realm of superhumans. The world calls that level a sword walker, though it is only the very next stage above a beginner. Only when Arhan faces it himself will he grasp how vast the gap between the two truly is. The bearded ancestor stands among the pale trees. Does that answer your question? He asks. Arhan nods that he understands, then asks if he may pose one more thing. If what he is sensing is correct, there is a man who entered the territory a while ago. A lone figure has made camp by the water at sunset and settled himself right here. By his fire rests a heavy blade, embers drifting as mana crackles faintly in the dusk. The stranger stirs, wrapped in threads of blue and crimson power that mark him as no ordinary man. Arhan's eyes widen. A sword walker, he breathes, already knowing the answer. That is right, Liam confirms. That man is on a completely different level from all the rabble so far. For now the master plans to observe and prepare for the worst, since he has no other choice. Arhan could abandon the territory to avoid a fight he cannot win, but that is not in his options. Although it has been so long that this land has become desolate beyond recognition, it is still the only place that holds within it everybody's precious memories. This ground carries too much history for him to simply turn his back and walk away. Arhan lowers his gaze, resolve hardening quietly behind his blonde hair. In this Iron Kingdom, the master reminds him, only the strong ever hold the answer. Even Arhan's simple wish is nothing but greed, and a luxury for someone as weak as he is now. So dwell on that trial, Liam tells him, feed on it and become as hard as steel. Grow strong enough that no one will ever dare to laugh at your words again. Was it because his master's words finally reached him, deep in the marrow of his will? A brilliant blue blade of mana flares to life, sharp and radiant in the dark. At sunset, the scarred cloaked stranger levels his sword at Arhan. Don't even think about running. Across the field, a glowing blade points toward the boy. If you run, the man warns. Wreathed in blue mana, the swordsman spreads his arms wide against the coming night. His cold blue eye locks on Arhan. I will cut you down on the spot, he vows. And just like that, sweat on his brow, an unexpected trial had finally arrived. Within the ruined territory, the rain fell soft as a whisper over the sleeping ancestral land. Observing the strange intruder quietly became a new part of Arhan's daily routine. What he learned from watching the scarred stranger day after day grew slowly clear. The man behaved as if he believed every empty house here still had an owner. He never touched even the smallest trinket, living simply with only the belongings he brought. Another quiet habit stood out too, watching the sunset lost in thought every single evening. Or in the hush of the forest, the stranger stood with hands clasped, quietly praying. This guest, Arhan decided, carried himself with the bearing of a knight. Liam agreed, calling him a swordsman who had already reached the level of a sword walker. And yet he strictly upheld rules and manners, even when no living soul was watching. Such inflexible men, Liam noted, are rare to find unless they happen to be knights. Knights, after all, are those who uphold honor and pursue justice, perhaps not a bad neighbor. It is true that they chase honor, Liam said, but calling them righteous would be misleading. By its very nature, honor is a deeply subjective thing, bent by whoever holds the sword. A knight's honor is defined by the one they serve, decided by the will of their employer. So Liam offered to teach Arhan, once more, the true meaning of a knight. A knight is merely a swordsman who uses honor as a pretext to exercise violence. An executioner clad in expensive gear, carrying out killings by techniques passed down for generations. Do not be blinded by the hollow ring of the word knight, Liam warned. Judge the target itself. The precious talent Arhan possessed, his master reminded him, was doubt. Doubt is my talent, the boy repeated softly, turning the strange idea over in his mind. You have been like this since childhood, always weighing the legends your father told you. Poring over pages, Arhan dug for the truth buried inside those old, worn stories. He found his answers by eliminating variables through micro-sensitivity and patient observation. Doubt is a refusal to be swayed by what you simply see and hear, an attitude of endless thought. It is the drive to try, again and again, to reach the truth hiding beneath the surface. Do not lose that trait of yours, Liam urged, like a diver plunging into unknown depths. For that, the god of war told him, is your true talent for the sword. Understood, Arhan answered quietly, letting the lesson settle deep into his bones. I will keep that in mind, master, he vowed, as a lone figure moved through the mist. Under the full moon, Arhan never once let down his guard regarding the strange man. He hoped that this one, at least, would not turn out to be a true intruder. I know you have been watching me this whole time, the stranger said, his blue blade igniting. Then came the cold warning, do not even think about running away from me. If you run, the brilliant mana blade promised, it will cut you down where you stand. Show me your back, Liam's voice echoed, urging Arhan to stand tall and unafraid. The scarred swordsman fixed his fierce gaze forward, blue mana rippling across his face. I will cut you down on the spot, he vowed, though this was not how Arhan wished things to go. Arhan drew his own needle-thin blade, refusing to flee the land that held everyone's memories. Then his mind drifted to another story, the tale of the sewing gypsy. Thanks to that alias, she once received recruitment offers from well-known mercenary groups. In those days, she was often pestered by thugs who came after hearing the rumors about her. Amid it all, a certain dangerous thought had quietly taken root inside her mind. Perhaps I have gone beyond the level of a mere female mercenary with a peculiar sword, she mused. That pride bled onto the ground the day a real opponent laid her low. A truly strong swordsman had appeared, and her clever tricks meant nothing before him. The moment that made her realize it was arrogance did not take long to come. They call you the sewing gypsy, do they not? The armored knight said, blade lowered. A fitting nickname for such a feeble little sword, he sneered down at her. Bloodied and beaten, she had truly believed she could be proud of her own skills. Flatter yourself and you sink to nothing but a lowly mercenary, the knight told her coldly. If you were not a woman, no different from a dog, I would have killed you on the spot. You survived today entirely thanks to the rules of the Red Hawk Knights, he declared. The Red Hawks never take the lives of women and children, out of respect for their chivalry. That day, staring at her trembling fist, she felt an immeasurable wall rise before her. The wall between herself and that man, she understood, was the wall called a knight. Arhan gripped his needle tightly, drawing hard-won strength from her painful memory. The stage that scarred swordsman had reached, Liam had said, is called the Sword Walker. In the memories he had devoured, Arhan was now far stronger than the woman who lost. He is coming, the boy breathed, feeling an overwhelming sense of death draw near. The stranger advanced through a haze of crimson, red eyes gleaming like a coming storm. Deep within Arhan's chest, a glowing blue mana heart pulsed and began to take shape. With every heartbeat, the power woven through his body was growing stronger. His eye blazed a brilliant blue, and suddenly Arhan could truly see it. He saw where mana was sprayed outside the body, flowing like visible blood vessels. A feat possible only from the level of a sword walker and above, adding will to attack and defense. Steel met steel as the two blades clashed, sparks screaming into the darkening air. This, Arhan realized, was the true walker's path he had only heard described in stories. What is your reason for watching me? The swordsman demanded, eyes narrowing in suspicion. I must distinguish whether you are a guest or an intruder, he said. Answer me. A year ago I left the territory for a while, Arhan admitted, and returned to find ruin. Since then, barbarians and vagrants have invaded, threatening this village and even my life. Unlike them, you seem distinctly and dangerously more powerful than any before. Whether you were an intruder or a guest would decide everything, Arhan explained. You intended to oppose me, the man said, even knowing the difference in our skills. This place holds a lifetime of my memories, Arhan answered without flinching. The scarred stranger studied the boy's face, something softening in his weathered eyes. A precious place, too precious to simply abandon and flee, and the swordsman said, I understand. Then it is time for me to state my own position, since neighbors should know each other's circumstances. So please lower your guard and your sword, and I will sheath mine and tell you my story. Come on now, the man coaxed gently, extending a truce toward the wary young heir. You must push yourself to the very brink of death endlessly, Liam's teaching whispered back, so that your body itself begins to crave a mana heart. How about it, my young descendant? I am sorry, but I cannot do that, Arhan said. I cannot fully trust you yet. He kept his needle raised, needing the blade for at least a little defense. I must uphold my honor, the swordsman said. I know that, yet I cannot back down either. Arhan stood firm, his back straight, choosing the hard road over the easy surrender. Fleeing in fear and giving up before even fighting is something he had sworn against. His blue eyes burned with quiet resolve, a vow etched deep into his heart. Something he had sworn never to do again, no matter what fearsome opponent stood before him. Under a bruised evening sky, two lone figures face each other across the ruined caravan grounds. The scarred swordsman studies Arhan closely, wondering just what kind of boy is standing before him. He notes that Arhan's whole body shows the marks of relentless training, though his frame stays slight and fragile. Yet for all that effort, the boy never learned proper swordsmanship, only an unorthodox style pouring everything into the first strike. Even judging generously, the stranger admits Arhan has not moved past the level of a raw beginner. The needle rests steady in Arhan's grip, posed like a swordsman who somehow believes in himself despite everything. By every measure the swordsman knows, this child should be no threat to him at all. And yet the man cannot look away, because there is something strange burning behind the boy's eyes. Arhan's blue iris glows faintly, alive with the flowing sight of a sword walker. The scarred stranger tilts his head back, his own eye flaring with cold mana light. He decides a half-hearted response simply will not do against a gaze like that. The armored swordsman squares his stance, ready to end this quickly and cleanly. In a heartbeat he chooses his path, aiming only to disarm the boy without truly harming him. He will strike Arhan's wrist and knock the needle free right here, the gentlest way to win. The blade whips toward the boy's hand in a bright, clean arc. For a single suspended moment, a small orb of light hangs in the falling dark. Steel screams as the strike lands, sparks flaring across the shadows. The swordsman's eyes go wide, because the impact did not go the way he planned. Arhan grits his teeth, sweat sliding down his face, but he holds firm through the collision. My sword, the stranger thinks in disbelief, was actually deflected by a boy who is not even a beginner. Not all of it, the stranger corrects himself, already dashing back in with his own blade raised high for second attack. The boy stood only one breath away from being cut down, and somehow slipped through. Around the blades the very air bends, mana pooling and rippling like disturbed water. The surrounding mana surges in waves, drawn helplessly toward the boy at its center. The stranger wonders if it truly formed inside Arhan in that single split second. There it burns, that abnormal mana heart glowing blue within the boy's chest. Even so, the swordsman insists, deflecting my blade should have been impossible for him. Could it be, he asks himself, because of the strange heart the boy now possesses? Most mana hearts are soft and flexible, but this one is astonishingly rigid and solid. It stands unbending, the stranger realizes, just like tempered steel. He cannot be certain of anything about this boy, and that uncertainty gnaws at him. But one thing at least is perfectly clear to him now. Arhan's sword is coming, and it carries the boy's entire being folded into the thrust. It is a strike staked on his very life, holding nothing at all in reserve. The scarred swordsman bares his teeth, meeting that reckless resolve head-on. He tells himself blocking the boy's blade a moment ago was not because of any real skill. It was nothing more than a fluke, a lucky accident that will not come twice. Arhan aimed for his vital points to keep the force minimal, hunting the smallest opening. The boy reads the trajectory and drives the needle's tip straight into that narrow gap. To block his strike, Arhan pours everything into one desperate, precise motion. The needle flashes and the impact detonates, light bursting across the dark field. The shock slams through him like colliding with a speeding carriage, agony as if every bone had shattered. That ravaging pain tears through Arhan's whole body as he holds his ground. The despairing gap in raw power between them is impossible to ignore. The scarred stranger smiles, almost delighted to find such a stubborn opponent. I have finally awakened a mana heart, Arhan thinks, the heart of steel itself. Even so, his thrusts alone will never truly reach a swordsman like this. Then there is only one way forward, the boy decides, to carve out a path entirely his own. As someone who now holds both the heart of steel and the needle, Arhan searches for that path. He reaches for the memories of Mary, the sewing gypsy, using them as a stepping stone. In memory he kneels beneath a wide, empty sky, a small figure facing something vast. That day, Mary collapsed before the overwhelming wall of a walker far beyond her. Facing an insurmountable limit head-on, her whole body trembled with helpless fear. The first thing that surfaced in her mind in that moment was a familiar voice. It was the voice of Heckle, the knight who once shaped her, speaking softly from the past. "Don't forget, Mary," he had told her, "most swordsmen see a wall and call it an unbreakable limit." Heckle warned that this is merely an excuse for those who lack the courage to keep striking. "Walls exist solely to be overcome," he said, "nothing more than stepping stones to greater heights. The fear before it is simply the fate of anyone who dares to hold a sword. Don't look away from it," his voice urges through the dark. "Stand tall instead, and face the wall head-on without flinching." In the memory, Heckle stands firm against a towering armored foe, sword lowered but unbroken. The enemy's blade comes crashing down with monstrous, unstoppable force. Mary is thrown back, her body twisting under the sheer weight of the blow. "You will surely be cut and torn apart miserably, time and time again," Heckle admits without softening it. "And you will fall to your knees in helplessness, feeling utterly powerless before it. But if you don't give up," he promises, "and continue to strike against that wall, your sword will surely one day break through where it once failed." The blade bites deep, and the memory blazes with the pain of pushing past every limit. "Surpass that wall," Heckle's voice rings out, and Arhan lifts his head with burning red eyes. In the darkness, a low pulse begins to build, mana gathering around the boy. The steel heart thrums harder, drumming out the rhythm of a resolve that refuses to kneel. Arhan rises wreathed in radiant blue mana, needle in hand, ready to carve his own path at last. A weathered swordsman with a scarred face gazes out, and the memory that shapes Arhan begins to speak. If you have ever held a sword, if you have lived a fierce life, then you already know this truth. There will always be a wall blocking your path, a lone figure standing before the dark. The pressure seeps deep beneath your skin, a crushing sense of hopelessness that bends the shoulders. It makes even a single step forward feel like an unbearable burden dragging at your feet. You will want to turn your back on it all and simply run away. And yet that boy, with his blue eyes fixed forward, refuses the easy retreat. Cracks of mana split the darkness as his resolve gathers into something dangerous. He intends to clash against the wall itself, to strike where wiser men would kneel. Arhan turns, blade in hand, a slight silhouette daring to face the impossible. It is nothing more than youthful recklessness, and yet it is a trial he must absolutely see through. It does not have to be a perfect path, the voice reminds him across the ruined ground. Even if it is clumsy and incomplete, the needle glints, ready to be cast. As long as there remains any possibility of reaching that place, that alone is enough. How he catches his breath, and what trajectory his blade intends to draw. Gather every clue, eliminate whatever is unnecessary, and create it, his eyes burning with focus. The needle sharpens to a single glowing point, one thin line of will against the world. To reach that place, Arhan hurls himself upward through spiraling threads of blue light. A single ribbon of mana carves through the black, a single path drawn by one thrust. "That is it, descendant," the scarred god of war murmurs, watching the caravan blood answer. "To advance without yielding before any adversity, no matter how tall the wall stands. That is what it means to be a caravan, the mana coiling like living serpents around him. Do not be afraid to clash and shatter," the voice commands as Arhan stands within the swirling glow. "And forge yourself anew, the blue blade of mana descending like a verdict. This is the flow of the caravan's will, radiant and unbroken across the generations." The gathered force detonates in a spiral of light and shattered stone. But now the memory shifts, and a young red-haired girl runs desperately through the dust. "I was afraid," she confesses, the words falling into the swirling haze behind her. Mary grits her teeth, needle clutched tight, a fierce grin masking the terror inside. "My circumstance of being the sole survivor amid the blazing flames," she remembers. The tragedy that took everything was merely the beginning of her long torment. There were times when she couldn't even face a mirror, days when breathing itself felt burdensome. What she truly had to fear was not the fire, her red eyes hardening with realization. It was her own weakness of constantly running away, so instead she will thrust. My daily life, my family, everything she loved swallowed by the merciless blaze. My future that was taken away, Mary stares back through the flames with quiet fury. By this world filled with fire, a lone figure walks the burning road ahead. The world asks if she pierced through it, and she screams her answer to the sky. Fire and blue mana twist together as Mary drives her body forward without hesitation. Even if I can't win, the flames roar around her advancing charge. I can face it, she declares, her needle blazing with newfound resolve. The overwhelming walker looms above, sword drawn against the small figure below. Mary lunges low beneath the giant's guard, needle aimed at the single opening. The great enemy grimaces as her thin blade finds the gap in his defense. A blinding streak of white tears across the frame as the thrust lands home. Mana screams along the strike, a single decisive line splitting the darkness. The force ripples outward, the impact echoing through the wounded air. A blade sweeps clean through, and the wall that once seemed eternal finally gives way. And so she came out into the world, a small silhouette beneath a pale rising moon. The teachings you passed down, and holding the single needle you placed in my hand. I've become free, just like you, Mary says, standing tall with quiet gratitude. Yearning for a life of wandering, her thoughts drift across the endless white snow. She lived such a life, her red eye reflecting a world swarming with monsters stronger than her. And there were many high walls that could never be overcome by will alone. Still, Heckle, she says, I can say this much amid the fading embers. Until the very last moment of my life, there wasn't a single wall left in my path. There wasn't a single thing I ever turned away from. Mary smiles, sword resting at her side. When that time comes, just as you did for me, she gazes into the moonlit wood. I will tell you my story too, tears welling as her eyes soften with memory. That story will probably begin like this, she whispers, Heckle, I'm. A knight strides forward through a moonlit road, coming to meet the waiting child. Not afraid of the fire anymore, the needle held steady, no more running. Mary closes her eyes, a single tear falling, at peace with the life she carved. The last embers fade into darkness, and her story passes on into Arhan's hands. Embers drift through a cold blue night, as the last of Mary's story burns down to ash. Arhan's blue eyes flutter open, and a soft breath escapes him as he stirs back to himself. He wonders quietly whether he actually lost consciousness after everything he just witnessed. A cloak rests over his shoulders, and he realizes the robe belongs to that scarred knight. A broken blade lies in the dirt, and the weight of it settles over him like a verdict. In the end, he admits, he failed to break through the wall he had set before himself. Do not be disheartened, young descendant, the god of war tells him with unexpected warmth. It was a struggle worthy of the caravan name, the scarred ancestor says, standing tall in the flames. Along with that painful defeat, the old warrior grins, haven't you noticed it yourself yet? Arhan feels it, a strange new fluidity in his mana that was never there before. His senses have sharpened too, keen now like those of a wild beast tracking prey in the dark. It feels almost as if he has become something more than the boy who arrived here. The story he lived was that of a veteran mercenary who spent a whole life on the battlefield. It was never just about the strength or the technique of a single devoured sword. The ancestor wanted to show Arhan her life itself, every scar and every choice within it. The will that never gives up, even in the face of immense and crushing trials. Beneath a pale moon, the god of war sits alone at the fire, teaching without words. Arhan smiles faintly and asks, would it really hurt to tell me things like this from the start? The scene shifts, and a figure across the firelight notes that Arhan has regained consciousness. Red eyes gleam in the dark as the stranger approaches through drifting sparks. But oh dear, the man sighs with a rueful little smile, sensing how tense the boy has become. It seems there are still misunderstandings between us left to resolve, he admits gently. There's no need to be so wary, young descendant. That man is not the kind to cause you harm. Even so, the ancestor allows. A little suspicion is unavoidable after all you've endured. I understand, given what you have been through, the stranger says, closing his eyes. It wouldn't be easy to lower your guard, so let me tell you my story first, he offers. Then perhaps you'll understand why I came, and why I could never be a threat to you. Allow me to properly introduce myself at last, young master, the man says warmly. My name is Peedle, a retired knight, a wanderer with nowhere left to go. And he adds, a terminally ill patient standing right on the very verge of death. Even high priests who studied medicine, all their lives affirmed he has a month left at most. I am nothing more than a mere sick man quietly waiting for death to arrive, Peedle says. For a moment the world tilts, firelight and shadow blurring across the still night. Once the brief commotion settled between them, the two finally sat down and had a real conversation. Sir Peedle, Arhan admits, was not a very eloquent man when it came to telling his own tale. It certainly wasn't the smoothest communication either of them had ever managed. But to Arhan, that very clumsiness felt like plain, unadorned sincerity. Summarizing what he learned, Peedle was a man who came looking for a place to die. The reason he left the knightly order, Peedle confessed, was nothing grand at all. After being diagnosed, he only wished to spend his final breathless moments on his own terms. A long silence follows, and Arhan simply watches the weary man across the fire. There seems to be no falsehood in his words, the ancestor observes of the aging knight. He doesn't seem to be lying, yet even now his mana heart tells a grimmer story. Peedle is being slowly devoured by the illness eating away at him from the inside. Once that sickness fully encroaches upon the mana heart, his life will simply end. What do you think, young master? The knight asks, searching Arhan's face for an answer. Peedle extends a rough, open hand and asks if this is enough to qualify as his neighbor. It mustn't have been easy to share a story like that, Arhan says with quiet respect. My name is Arhan, the boy answers, meeting the dying knight's tired, hopeful gaze. Welcome to the neighborhood, Sir Peedle, Arhan says, clasping the offered hand at last. The god of war watches the handshake from the shadows, arms folded, saying nothing. Peedle smiles, worn and grateful, while Arhan turns his eyes toward the coming dawn. Thank you for the hospitality, young Master Arhan, the knight says as blue mana coils bright. Finally, the ancestor declares, the time has come for Arhan to take the next step forward. There is no other place better than that, the god of war promises through the crackling light. A few days later, a winding green path opens across gentle hills beneath an open sky. A cart rolls along the road, and Arhan admits that honestly, all of this is still hard to understand. Now that I've ascended to sword beginner, Arhan says, I thought you might instruct me directly. So why, he asks, are you suddenly telling me there's some far-away place we absolutely must go? Thanks to Sir Peedle, Arhan no longer has to worry about intruders disturbing the mansion. Is there really a need to travel this far, Arhan wonders, watching the road unspool ahead. Tusk, the ancestor chides, you still haven't escaped the mindset of an ordinary person. How many times must I tell you before you understand, you foolish descendant, he sighs. As long as the blood of steel flows in your veins, you need endless struggle, not conventional training. Us caravans are different from anyone else in the world, and just as special because of it. And the digestion of newly devoured swords, he explains, is the true priority for your growth. Our current destination is the perfect place to look for exactly that kind of growth. A place where reputation, status, or origin mean nothing to the people who gather there. Where only those who covet flesh-splattering strife come to test their steel against each other. A stage built for life-staking duels, and in my era the old warrior recalls, that place was given a name. Grand stone arches rise ahead as a blade flashes, and Arhan steps toward his next battlefield. Their long road ends at Firma, the sprawling city of steel nestled among distant green hills. Here a blacksmith hammers glowing iron, for metallurgy has developed greatly in this restless place. It is no exaggeration that nearly every piece of equipment in the Iron Kingdom is forged right here. Armored knights walk its crowded streets, earning Firma its proud name as the holy land of the sword. Yet the true force that revitalized this city was something else entirely, rising in grand stone arches. That something is this very place, a coliseum where steel and fate collide daily. The arena, where Arhan is flung tumbling into its dust as his lesson truly begins. The name has shifted with the passage of time, the god of war recalls, watching from memory. Above all, the heat radiating even outside the stadium has not changed one single bit. Truly diverse struggles took place here, Arhan muses, blue eyes narrowing at the old grounds. All were fierce duels, humans against beasts and warriors from wildly different lands clashing. But the most violent of them all was the dreaded contest known as the combat duel. A clenched crimson fist rises, gladiators claiming everything left behind as the spoils of war. Men would roll in the dirt and fight like beasts, clawing for survival and glory. Blades flashed and blood sprayed as the crowd roared for every desperate strike. It was truly a frenzied fight to the death, staged for a screaming audience. Gladiators grinned through the carnage, drunk on the heated excitement of the killing floor. A city of madness was built upon the deep pools of blood they spilled. That, the god of war declares, is exactly what Firma truly is at its core. Certainly, if his words hold true, there is no better place for growing one's power. Arhan would gain real combat experience and devour the weapons of every gladiator he defeats. You are truly simple-minded, descendant, the god of war sighs at the eager plan. Devouring every stray blade would never work, he warns, as scattered heirlooms glint in ruins. Do that, and you would soon be consumed by the jumbled memories of the swords. Shattered blades fracture into ghostly fragments, threatening to drown Arhan in borrowed lives. The sword must not control you, or you would lose yourself utterly to its will. So until you open your own eyes, you must consume only the swords I choose. Now then, the ancestor says, let us get going to this hot place of struggle. Above the arena, the open sky stretches wide and bright over the coming trials. 3 hours later, Arhan and Petal finally reach the towering Colosseum on foot. A hulking armored gladiator confirms it. Yes, Mr. Arhan, this is your first time in the arena. Then please head to the player registration desk and get a medal issued first. You see, without it, entry is simply impossible, the man explains to a baffled Arhan. A medal? What? The Arhan blinks in confusion as swords clash somewhere behind him. Even the god of war is stumped, muttering what is that? Question marks swarming his head. There was no such thing in my time, the old ancestor grumbles, thoroughly out of the loop. Young man, please get your medal and line up again, the cheerful receptionist chirps. So Arhan is handed a medal, the arena's strange new token of admission. It is the arena's unique weight class indicator, a measure of a fighter's martial power. The order of those classes, ranked from the very top downward, runs like this. White, platinum, and gold medals gleam, each marking a loftier tier of proven strength. Arhan scowls at his own. This crap, I mean copper, is only a bronze medal. Only a bronze medal, the lowest rung. He notes that a lot has clearly changed here. Quite unlike your sentiment from a few hours ago, Master, Petal teases with a sly grin. The god of war roars, whether a scholar who never held a knife or a barbarian who chopped up 100 men. Once they came, they were all just shoved in. That was the arena of my time. This is utterly preposterous. The ancestor fumes at these newfangled orderly rules. If life-or-death duels ran for centuries, there would be no gladiators left alive. Experts fighting experts, novices fighting novices, that makes for a genuinely good show. As a result, the arena became a symbolic landmark, drawing spectators from far and wide. The Grand Colosseum stands radiant against blue sky, proof of a very successful change. Even if you win a duel, they say you generally do not take the loser's life anymore. Though Petal notes with a laugh, the loser's body will not exactly leave in one piece. The more I hear, the more dumbfounded I get, the god of war admits, but this might be fortunate for you. A confrontation with an equal enemy, he says, teaches you a very different kind of lesson. Your sword is especially prone to breaking, so meeting a foe of your rank matters. Until then, it would be good to look around this whole place first. Descendant, what is this? The ancestor suddenly murmurs, his attention snapping elsewhere. Arhan's blue eye widens sharply, sensing the very thing his ancestor has noticed. A tall hall opens before them, its walls lined with row upon row of mounted weapons. What? Arhan breathes, staring at blades displayed openly in the middle of the street. He stands small beneath the soaring arches, dwarfed by this shrine of forgotten steel. Petal looms behind him, calm, as Arhan sweats at the sheer weight of the place. A lone figure moves toward them down the columned corridor as Arhan turns, sensing the approaching keeper of the hall. A kindly manager approaches, introducing himself as Tom, the keeper of this hall. It seems this is the first time the young gentleman has seen the Hall of Fame. The god of war studies the old man's face intently, weighing something unspoken. My name is Arhan, the heir says politely, and I would listen gratefully to your kindness. The armaments displayed here, Tom explains, all once belonged to celebrated gladiators. They are old and worn, having long lost their function as usable weapons. But they are displayed to honor the fighting spirit of those who once wielded them. Sunlight streams through the arches over the quiet, reverent rows of relics. If you have any more questions about the hall, please ask. That is my small joy. Descendant, ask him this, the god of war urges, his voice suddenly low and urgent. You know what this means, right? The grinning ancestor says as Arhan's eyes go wide. Light spills over a single mounted blade as Arhan whispers, I found it. The next sword you must devour, the god of war declares over the dark, waiting weapon. The blade glows in shadow, and the hunt for Arhan's next devoured sword is only beginning. The colossal arena of Firma looms against the open sky, the holy ground where sword and steel are worshipped. Beneath its shadow, a passage marked for arena competitors swallows Arhan into the dark under the stands. The young blonde heir of the Karavan family steps forward, blue eyes steady, ready to learn how this place truly works. The kindly keeper Tom raises a finger and confirms there is indeed a reward for those who climb the ranks. Those who prove themselves as gladiators are granted the right to claim one weapon, matching the color of their medal. Every time your rank rises by a single stage, the caliber of the weapon you may claim rises with it. For reference, the blade Arhan set his eyes on is one earned only when a gladiator reaches silver rank. Silver rank, the god of war repeats, weighing exactly how far his young heir would have to climb. The old retired swords in this hall may look like relics, worn down and left to gather dust. But to Arhan, blades like those are worth their weight in gold, worth every fight to secure. He can hardly rob the Hall of Fame and steal them all, and Tom is clearly no ordinary keeper. That manager seemed like a gentle old man, but Arhan couldn't sense the bottom of his depths. The god of war notes that manager is only half complete, yet still far beyond an ordinary blade's reach. Tom is a sword expert, a master standing at the very stage right before true Swordmaster. An expert, Arhan gasps, the weight of that word landing hard on the young heir. The stage right before Swordmaster, hidden inside a smiling caretaker no one would ever suspect. There is nothing so surprising about it, for those who reach that realm are all eccentrics. Arhan glances back, half convinced the old man had genuinely wanted to catch him committing robbery. The arena has changed across the ages, yet something in its bones has stayed exactly the same. Fighting purely as a gladiator, stripped of name and title, remains the arena's long-standing tradition. Facing them only as gladiators and never person to person, Arhan admits, is not such a bad thing. Then he too can be free from hesitation when he finally draws his blade against them. In the torchlit dark, he walks beside the robed keeper, seeing a true gladiator for the first time. Tom gently lowers his voice and asks what alias the young master intends to use inside the arena. No one who sets foot in the arena uses their real name, for the outside self only becomes a hindrance. Arhan should choose a name he can be proud of, one that will accompany his life as a gladiator. Tom leads him before a single mounted blade, the one weapon that will walk beside him. The sword waits behind glass, patient and gleaming, the very prize the god of war has chosen. Under the great gate, Arhan begins to say the name he will carry, then I'll go with. The keeper's face sharpens with curiosity, calling it a word he is hearing for the very first time. Tom wonders aloud if it's plucked from some night novel, then prays victory follows the young gladiator's first step. Arhan stands at the mouth of the arena, sunlight pouring over him as the crowd's roar swells. He raises a hand to steady himself, blue eyes cold and clear beneath the noise of the stands. The vast ring opens before him, an ocean of empty seats slowly filling for the day's spectacle. Bronze is the lowest rank in the arena, and a bronze bout draws only the pettiest of gamblers. This is nothing more than a way to kill the boredom hanging between the major matches. So what fills the stadium at this hour is not enthusiastic cheering or warm applause. It is a downpour of vicious boos and open contempt hurled from every corner of the seats. A spectator howls whether he came all this way just to watch two nobodies flail about. Hey Beanpole, another jeers, if you're going to be boring and weak then just die already. The crowd offers only humiliation and contempt for the weak, and Arhan takes it in silence. Tom's voice drifts to him, asking whether the young gladiator is at all intimidated by the boos. Keep in mind, the keeper says, that you now shoulder the long history and honor of this arena. Of course, Arhan answers, his single visible eye burning with a calm, unshakable resolve. That is precisely why he will win, he vows, and it will not be a matter of luck. The announcer whips up the stands, promising today's third match will show off a rookie of note. A rookie among rookies, he crows, a masked greenhorn with absolutely nothing yet to his name. Boasting his first arena appearance in his life, the greenhorn rookie gladiator, Liam. His opponent, since debut, has brutally taken the lives of every gladiator set before him. A mountain of a man rises across the sand, a killer riding 3 consecutive victories. The giant gladiator Temur bears his grin, a beast dedicated in full to the goddess Lepre. This sacred match, the announcer promises, will be an offering laid at the goddess's feet. Liam Temur sneers down at him, dismissing it as some stupid name the kid dreamed up. As expected, Temur scoffs. It would be a waste to even use his blade on the likes of Arhan. The giant leans down and the masked boy meets his gaze. The crowd, sensing a proposal is about to be offered. The giant lifts a ridiculous sword and mask, telling the boy to dance to the beat of his clapping. Then, out of special generosity, Temur boasts, he will preserve that slender little neck of his. There must be a reason, he laughs, that a fearless kid came crawling to bet on such an ending. Do I look like I care about unspoken rules? Temur roars, his mask twisting with cruelty. In the Zernia Mountains, where he was born and raised, men who lose are always killed. That is why he butchered every gladiator he ever faced before setting foot in this ring. He snapped their necks with these very hands, he growls, savoring the memory of each one. In silhouette, he hoists a struggling figure off the ground, a shadow of every kill he has claimed. Go that far, you ask, because that is the rightful privilege the winner alone gets to enjoy. Temur's grin stretches wide, calling the slaughter nothing less than the finest entertainment. Whether he snaps a neck or twists the limbs, killing something this insignificant brings him no thrill. So he taunts, put on a show with that girlish little body so the crowd doesn't die of boredom. That will be the price for your life, he declares, while Arhan simply stares back and says nothing. The crowd stirs, sensing this drawn-out war of words might make the match interesting after all. The referee steps in and orders both gladiators to take their positions on the sand. The match will begin immediately. The call rings out across the sunlit ring. Arhan turns his back on the giant, unhurried, and finally speaks with quiet confidence. I also have a proposal, the young heir says, and the words wipe the grin clean off Temur. Mocking my name like that, Temur snarls, shaken, and demands the boy take it back at once. Then I'll let you die comfortably, Arhan offers, calm as a man discussing the weather. A stifled laugh escapes him, and the giant's whole face darkens with rising fury. Puahaha, Temur bursts out, oh my, I'm so scared, mocking the tiny challenger before him. Did the young master pick up some third-rate night novel and read it? He sneers between laughs. The hell is Liam anyway, he jeers. Was it the name of your daddy who died first? If Arhan listens obediently even now, the giant promises with false mercy to make it easy on him. It becomes hard to go easy on you, Temur warns, closing the distance across the sand. The masked giant grins wide, certain this is the moment he crushes another helpless rookie. Then steel flashes, and Arhan moves faster than a boasting bronze-rank brute could ever follow. A spray of blood arcs across the white, one crimson bead hanging in the sudden silence. I'll say it one more time, the masked heir tells him, blood dripping from a fresh wound. Apologize for insulting my name, Arhan commands, blue eyes cold above the bloodied mask. If you want to die comfortably, he finishes, and the arena holds its breath to be continued. The masked rookie Liam stands over the bleeding giant, coldly finishing his sentence, for insulting my name. Then with terrifying calm, Arhan makes his offer, if you want to die comfortably. Temur stares up, dust settling around him, barely able to force out the shaken words, why you? The giant snarls back, you bastard, and lunges up off the arena floor in a furious rush. Steel clashes and sparks explode as Temur's heavy blade slams against Arhan's slender sword. Arhan slips through the assault like water, his footwork carrying him past every desperate swing. Behind his battered helmet, Temur grinds his teeth, a low growl escaping through the pain. Fresh blood streams down the giant's arm, where the young swordsman has already cut him. Temur throws his head back and roars in raw agony and disbelief across the whole arena. In the crowd, spectators wince and cry out as the giant's screams echo up the stands. Far below on the sand, the small masked figure of Arhan stands utterly composed and alone. Temir's mind reels in panic. What the hell is going on? Nothing about this makes sense. Just moments ago, this boy was trembling and looked completely amateurish before him. The giant grips his weapon, thoughts racing, that brat doing this to me, how? A cold dread creeps in as Temir wonders, don't tell me it was, surely not. The horrifying realization blooms in his skull. Was he acting weak on purpose the whole time? Arhan stands silhouetted against the light, blade in hand, a shadow far deadlier than he seemed. The thought finishes itself, to lower my guard and create an opening, and it worked perfectly. Arhan speaks plainly, reminding the giant that you said this is not child's play. Temir bares his teeth in a furious, animal snarl, spit flying as rage overtakes his fear. Gripping his blade white-knuckled, the giant screams his only remaining plan, I'll kill you. Steel whistles as Temir hurls another massive strike at the nimble young swordsman. Arhan bends and twists beneath the blow, the giant blade shearing through empty air. The heavy sword scrapes the ground, kicking up dust as its target simply is not there. Sweat drips from Temir's eye as frustration boils over. Damn it, why can I not land a hit? Temir marvels in fury. This brat is dodging all my attacks like it is nothing. And all by a paper-thin margin, the giant realizes, each slip calculated to the finest hair. Arhan reads the swing perfectly and slides clear, murmuring that everything is going perfectly. Panting hard, Temir's thoughts fracture this guy. What exactly is he right now? The giant stares at the small figure and the terrible question forms. What am I fighting against? Another blade strike lands wide, tearing across the stone as Arhan keeps drifting away untouched. Arhan darts low across the sand, closing distance with the fluid grace of a true swordsman. His slender blade flashes forward in a gleaming arc aimed straight at the exposed giant. The sword bites deep, and Temir's huge frame convulses as the strike punches home. The giant chokes out a strangled "ka," blood spraying as the blade withdraws. Arhan whirls into another cut, his weapon carving a bright crimson line through the air. The young swordsman leaps and spins along the arena wall, an unstoppable blur of motion. From high above, his tiny masked silhouette drops back toward the reeling giant like a falling star. In the vast arena, Temir stands battered and gasping while Arhan levels his blade once more. The giant groans, ugh, his red eyes wide as another strike comes screaming toward him. Arhan's sword lashes out again, a silver flash slicing across the giant's guard. The blow lands in Temir's helmeted head, snaps back under the brutal, precise impact. Arhan strides slowly across the sand toward the giant's crumpled body, each heavy footstep echoing through the silent arena. Arhan lowers his blade and offers mercy once more. I'll make you an offer again. But first he recalls Temir's own cruelty. Take off that ridiculous helmet, and to the beat of my clapping dance. The mask frames Arhan's cold blue eyes as he stares the beaten giant down without a trace of mercy on his face. Old Tom watches from the stands as Arhan's calm voice offers, then I'll spare that useless head of yours. Temir crumples, clutching his wounds, his massive body finally broken and trembling on the sand. The giant gasps out his surrender. All right, I accept that offer, just wait a moment. Struggling for air, Temir pleads, breathe, I can't breathe properly, give me a second. But his hand creeps quietly toward his fallen blade, thinking a few seconds is all he needs. In a flash, Arhan's sword pins that treacherous hand, drawing a spurt of bright blood. The blade drives clean through, and the giant's single eye goes wide with dawning horror. Arhan warns him coldly, you'd better choose your next move carefully from here on. The reason lands like a death sentence, because there won't be any more offers after this. Beaten and pinned in the vast arena, Temir can only manage a tiny, defeated A. At last the giant swallows his pride. I apologize for insulting your name, please, just spare my life. In the crowd, Tom and a young spectator watch the impossible upset unfold in stunned silence. Then the arena erupts, a red-haired man screaming himself hoarse in wild, roaring excitement. Faces twist with delight as the whole stands begin to chant for the masked underdog. One fan gushes he's the best bronze I've seen lately, while another crows, glad I bet on the underdog, we're rich. One roars he's going all in from now on, then blanks what was his name again, earning an idiot did you forget already. Standing alone in the light, blade at his side, the answer rings out, it's Liam. The chant swells across the arena, the masked gladiator, Liam, Liam, over and over. Tom smiles quietly amid the thunder, thinking, I felt he was extraordinary, and enjoys the moment. Tom's smile fades as he reflects, but to receive such enthusiastic cheers from the very first match is a dangerous thing. The old keeper reflects with pride. It seems I have formed a connection with a very promising gladiator. Tom's expression darkens as he admits, however, I am also concerned, because in this arena excessive attention is often a curse. In this arena, excessive attention is often, a shadowy figure notes, watching Arhan from the dark corridor. Two figures speak in hushed tones, warning that too much fame can spread through this place, like poison. Later, out of his mask, Arhan blinks in polite confusion at an unexpected visitor, pardon. He asks again, I'm sorry, but what did you just say? Unsure he heard the offer correctly. The green-haired arena official beams. Our arena has evaluated you very positively, Liam. Therefore, although it is unusual, we'd like to make a proposal befitting your performance. A silver medal gleams in the light as she names the prize. A silver promotion match. Would you be willing to challenge it? The blonde heir of the Karavan family sweats under a strange new offer laid before him. 2 days have passed since Arhan's debut match against the giant Temur. In the 3 matches held since, he tells us plainly, he won every single one. Blade planted in the arena sand, he dispatched each foe in a rational, efficient manner. The green-haired official smiles sweetly and calls it pure goodwill for valuing those matches. But to see her offer as simple kindness, Arhan admits, something about it feels wrong. His blue eye narrows, silent, weighing the woman across from him with quiet suspicion. The condition for promotion, she explains, is simple, a single duel against a chosen contestant. You don't even need to fight hard, she chirps, waving away the whole affair. Just endure for 3 minutes after the match starts, and your victory is declared. As he surely knows, she adds, this is a really rare opportunity to receive. Not only that, she promises, he would also receive far greater rewards than before. Higher match fees set accordingly, she declares, gold gleaming to tempt the young gladiator. To think you can get all this after just 3 minutes, she coos, what do you say, Mr. Liam? You realize what a tremendous opportunity this is, she presses, leaning close. But behind the honeyed words lies an old arena custom the veterans call rookie stomping. It is a tradition dating back to when this place was nothing but a brutal fighting pit. A procedure to weed out cunning rookies like him who only fight efficiently. It is a special event for the audience's twisted entertainment, watching bright talents broken. A rookie is used as bait, thrown against a strong man he cannot possibly handle. It is merely an exhibition of the newcomer being miserably toyed with for sport. Grinning spectators lean over the railing, hungry for a promising fighter's public ruin. If he does not wish to be humiliated, the wiser move would be to refuse this offer. So what will you do? A voice asks, as Arhan stands there in shadowed thought. Isn't the answer obvious, he replies, a cold gleam sliding across his eye. I accept, he says, and I shall gladly go against whoever the opponent turns out to be. 2 days later, the arena notified him of exactly who his match opponent would be. Their alias is the Black Bride, a graduate of a prestigious academy, undefeated in silver rank. A powerhouse sword walker, blade driven into stone beneath a bleeding crimson moon. Merely holding the academy diploma grants the rank of knight, a symbol of the elite course. In other words, this opponent overwhelms Arhan in every single aspect that matters. He looked into the Black Bride and found them notorious, feared through every back alley. It is said every single opponent they faced was left unable to ever recover. If they are prepared to that extent, even enduring just 3 minutes will be no small feat. Old Tom scratches his chin, muttering, what do they call this situation these days? Ah, right. They say you're screwed, the old keeper cackles, jabbing a finger at the unbothered boy. Still, Tom reasons, this Black Bride person likely isn't stronger than the swordsman Peter. Even if that sickly man was frail, he had reached the very pinnacle among sword walkers. The difference between then and now is clear, for Peter tailored his skill to Arhan's level. But you cannot expect that same gentle tolerance from the Black Bride, Tom warns gravely. Arhan simply gazes ahead, petals drifting past, unshaken by the doom stacked against him. "Since you opened my eyes to the terrible reality approaching me," he says, "I'm grateful beyond words. But I also carry the steel mana heart within me, a power all my own." And the variable known as Mary's memories, glowing at his chest like a hidden blade. His master, he reflects, does not lie when it comes to the truth of swords. The little gladiator, Liam, a name now whispered with growing interest through the arena. Somewhere in the crowd, a hooded figure in dark robes lifts a hand toward their face. A woman with long dark hair watches him from the shadows, her gaze sharp and unreadable. Arhan turns, blue eyes wide, sensing someone has fixed their full attention upon him. His eye trembles with alarm, for he could not feel her presence at all until now. He glances back over his shoulder toward the stranger who slipped past his every instinct. A long blade wrapped in cloth, forged in the style favored by warriors of the East. Don't tell me, he thinks, as the cloaked woman strides forward, is this the Black Bride? He doesn't know why she came to find him, but there is no need to admit it aloud. "A gladiator, who's that?" she says flatly. "I think you've got the wrong person." "You're making this troublesome," she murmurs, drawing the wrapped sword with quiet menace. Steel flashes as her blade whips toward the boy in a single blurring motion. What the crowd in the moment seem to gasp, stunned by the sudden strike. But Arhan's hand snaps up, catching the deadly edge before it can reach him. The sword hangs frozen an inch away, halted cold by a rookie's impossible reflex. "Don't make me waste my time, little gladiator," she says, unimpressed and dangerous. The two stand locked together, his fingers pinching her steel, neither willing to yield. That split-second reaction, she notes, to that unique needle-like sword of hers. "You can't deceive my eyes," she says coolly, certain now she has found her prey. "There's no need to be so on guard," she offers. "I just came here to make a proposal." "What proposal?" he asks, and her answer is blunt: "Forfeit the match entirely." Her profile sharp against the dusk, she warns him, "Don't make a foolish choice." The alley falls quiet as she waits, cloak trailing for his surrender. "I say I'll still participate," he answers, and she asks then, "What will you do?" Then she says, voice curling dark and cold, "You will pay the price for it." The Black Bride turns away, crimson light bleeding across her face, threat left hanging. That night, a lone figure crosses a moonlit courtyard toward a familiar hall. A grinning old man notes with a smile that a welcome guest has arrived. "What brings you here at this hour?" he asks the visitor stepping from the dark. "Young Master Arhan," the servant murmurs, recognizing the heir returned in secret. "Sorry for visiting at such a late hour, Tom," Arhan says with a weary, resolute face. "Even though I came unannounced like this, I know it's a shameful request to make. But could I take a sword from this hall?" he asks, his blue eye ablaze with me. The Black Bride's needle blade strikes the alley stone, and her cold ultimatum still hangs in the night air. She asks what he will do, her hooded figure looming while Arhan weighs a choice most men would never survive. "You will pay the price," she warns, "because there is no mercy for an enemy who faces her with a sword in hand." Arhan stands unmoved beneath the burning sky, refusing to bow to a threat meant to break lesser men. "Judge wisely," her voice echoes over the rooftops, but he has already made his decision. "What if I say I'll still participate?" Arhan answers, a lone figure standing tall down the empty road. Memory pulls him back to his frail master Peter, who once measured every swordsman by the wall of the Sword Walker realm. But for that girl, Peter said, that wall would not even be a small obstacle. The sight of her spreading her wings toward the next realm never seemed all that far away. "She is a genius," Peter declared, the words falling as softly as a drifting feather. Radiant wings of talent unfurl in Arhan's mind, the mark of a prodigy his master rarely praised. And for a master so strict about swords, to evaluate her so highly meant something extraordinary. As expected, Arhan thinks, watching her shadow, the Black Bride is exactly as fearsome as the legends claim. Between him and her stretches a distant gap, a chasm of skill that would terrify anyone honest with themselves. But even so, a faint purple light stirs within him, refusing to accept that the distance is final. There is still one option left to him, and Arhan presses a hand to his chest where power quietly hums. The old master's face fills his memory again, stern and knowing, the man who taught him every truth of the blade. "Let's hurry along," someone urges, and the scene shifts to a stairway climbing into the evening. Under a darkening sky, Arhan walks toward home, chasing the second sword he means to claim. In the family hall, the old servant Tom stands waiting, unsure what his young master intends. Take a sword from the hall, Tom repeats slowly, hardly believing the shameful request. Young master, what do you mean? The old man breathes, silence stretching thin between them. Is that request perhaps related to the promotion match against the Black Bride? Tom finally asks. You knew, Arhan realizes, since news of the bout is already making noise all across the city. It's a match between two promising gladiators, Tom notes, and the planners played quite a nasty prank. Personally, regarding that promotion match, Tom says gently, I'd like to recommend you reconsider, young master. The Black Bride, he intones, a name spoken of only where supreme martial talent is said to bloom. She hails from the Eastern continent, graduating top of her class from one of its 3 great academies. And even here in the arena, she has overwhelmed countless gladiators, a genius in name and in reality. Of course, young Master Arhan is also a gladiator of excellent qualities, Tom adds carefully. However, it is simply too early for him to face such a raging wave, the old servant pleads. Gain strength through a few more matches first, Tom insists, gesturing with the worry of a lifelong caretaker. I guarantee that much, he says, offering his hand, so what do you think, young master? Thank you for the advice, Tom. Arhan answers quietly, however, I intend to face it. It's true that my body trembles, he admits, glancing at his own steady, waiting hand. As one who prays to the goddess Lepri, Arhan says with a hand on his chest, to avoid combat our fear. To run would be to betray my gladiator heart, he vows, the words settling like an oath. I came to borrow courage from this hall, Arhan explains, so that tomorrow I may receive its energy. The enshrined blades of gladiators who fought greatly in the past gleam softly in the dark. If I survive, I'll be promoted and may claim a souvenir, and if I die, you can simply retrieve the sword. It was just my greed to hold even a handful of that courage, Arhan confesses without shame. Nothing more, he says softly, and Tom's weathered eye glistens at the sincerity in those words. Under a lone moon, Arhan stands before the hall, though the rules make such a request all but impossible. But as the manager who guards the souls enshrined here, Tom says, with respect, I cannot ignore the young master's heart. I will grant that request, the old servant declares, extending his hand toward the waiting blades. Despite how I look, I hold real authority in this arena, Tom smiles, so I can gift you this courage anytime. Seeing such a wonderful gladiator after so long, he chuckles, I truly cannot control my emotions. Really, thank you so much, Tom, Arhan bows, and the old man tears up in the moonlight. The heir turns to the enshrined swords as Tom watches his back with quiet, welling pride. Now that I see it, Tom murmurs, you overflow with far more talent than even this sword itself. Arhan lifts a blade from the hall, its keen edge answering the resolve burning in his eyes. With this, he thinks, the conditions are finally met for the trial that waits at dawn. Now all that remains is one thing, he says, standing beneath the enshrined weapon he has chosen. Only to digest the power of that sword, purple mana spiraling hungrily around the blade. The energy swells and flows, a storm of light gathering to be devoured by his steel mana heart. The arena corridors wait cold and empty, the stage where his fate will soon be decided. The day of the promotion match arrives, and a gleeful announcer throws back his head to roar the bout. The crowd's cry splits the air as the killer beauty steps into the light. Her robes trail like smoke, the undefeated Black Bride making her entrance at last. Sharp painted eyes narrow beneath her veil, cold as a needle before the thrust. Elsewhere the planners had earlier pressed her, asking that she trample the little gladiator. You want me to trample him? She asked flatly, someone who is merely a sword beginner. The green-haired official smiled sweetly, adding that cutting off one of his arms or legs was the planner's true request. It would thrill the audience too if things went that way, the official purred with cruel delight. You truly think I would accept such a proposal? The Black Bride answered, her gaze icy. Would it displease you, Lady Black Bride? The official coaxed, offering a prize from their storage. We plan to give the dragon sword of the East Continent as a reward, the official offers, and the shadowed blade shimmers. The Black Bride's eyes went wide, the name of that legendary sword striking her like a bell. Word through the grapevine says the item carries great meaning to swordsmen of the Eastern Continent. It is one of the very reasons Lady Black Bride still walks the arena as a gladiator at all. Then I'll take your silence as acceptance, the official beamed, sealing the wicked bargain. So back in the present she descends into the arena, her veiled silhouette gliding toward the match. A proposal I cannot refuse, she reflects, which is why I stand here as a human, not a gladiator. It was the only mercy I could bestow, she thinks, standing near the small figure of her opponent. Her footsteps ring across the sand as Arhan waits alone at the far end of the arena. The Black Bride draws her needle-thin blade, its point catching the roar of the watching crowd. "Little gladiator," she calls softly, addressing the boy she has been ordered to break. Arhan advances through the light, borrowed sword in hand, his shadow long across the ground. "I gave you enough warnings," she says, her red eye glinting about what happens from now on. "Is yours," she begins, the blade already flashing as her strike splits the very air. Her weapon sings forward with lethal grace, the killing question finishing itself in steel. A crimson pressure floods the arena, a monstrous presence rising to swallow the little gladiator whole. "Don't tell me," someone gasps from that child, sensing something impossible awaken in Arhan. The blonde heir lifts his gaze, calm and cold, the trembling long since burned out of him. "I am a resident of the Free City crowd," he says, naming the world he has chosen to fight for. A hooded silhouette stirs in the dark, wreathed in violet flame, the watcher who marked this boy. To reclaim freedom, the words resolve in the shadows, and Arhan's true trial begins. The sun bleeds low over the water, gilding a horizon that once promised something better. This place split away from the ruined ancient republic, a fragment left behind by a fallen age. In time it rose again, and became one of the 6 free cities of the world. It was once called Paradise, a land renowned across every map for its beauty. But history records that such a land is meaningless, for no one can live inside the past. The present-day crowd is a place where freedom and hope have long since vanished. In its gray, crooked streets, ragged people wait beside masters who own their very lives. Paradise had curdled into nothing more than a terrible land of chains and hunger. The beginning of this deep shadow started, as these things always do, with the corruption of the nobles. They drowned in luxury, swirling their wine, chasing a greed that could not be filled like a bottomless pit. They sold the city's own territory to a foreign power, the Golden Empire. They pawned it as collateral to borrow massive amounts of gold coins from the Red Bank. And with a stroke of a pen, they signed away crowds' rights and its dignity. So the free people fell, dragged down into the status of slaves. A young man with dark hair remembers, and he says he always harbored a question. His father was beaten to death while begging tourists for a single scrap of food. His mother sold herself so that her remaining children would not starve. His little sister died of a fever because they lacked a few copper coins, her small hand gone cold. Alone in a dim room beside the dead, he asks why they must be stuck living their present days like this. He sits with his head bowed, a broken figure swallowed by grief and shadow. For a time, an unexpected peace hung over the city, quiet as a waiting guillotine. A crowd gathered before the scaffold, an execution drawing the hungry eyes of the poor. A bound man knelt in the square, condemned before the watching masses. A proud citizen, tormented beyond endurance by a drunken tourist's rampage, finally snapped. Unable to bear the suffering any longer, he chose to resist. Bloodshed is a trivial sight in this city, yet an outsider becoming the victim was unprecedented. The blows fell hard and fast, a fury with no mercy in it. To appease the anger of the great powers, crowd carried out a public execution, making a bloody example of the man who dared resist. It was clearly unreasonable, violence unmatched in its unfairness, yet no one dared to look away. They feared the outsiders would use this as a pretext to make the screams burst forth even harsher. But the next day arrived, and something in the city had shifted. In the twisting streets of crowd, there were no screams at all. The next day and the day after that, the ragged people simply went on with weary faces. An unfamiliar silence continued, hanging over the rooftops like held breath. And the reason for that silence was truly simple. In the eyes of the outsiders, that day's incident meant the citizens they regarded as mere slaves. A cold yellow eye narrows, and a new suspicion takes root behind it. The slaves had begun to look like dangerous beings, no longer safe to abuse. They were people who had been hiding sharp fangs all along, beneath their bowed heads. The young man realized that they could have broken the shackles that bound them at any time. And in that moment, he finally understood the truth of his own guilt. To all the violence and despair permeating this city, the Silent Ones were accomplices. This, he says, was the sin of non-resistance, the quiet crime of never once fighting back. In a gilded hall, the fat lords laugh and drink, blind to the fangs sharpening below them. Freedom, he understood, comes only with a price, and someone must willingly spill blood. Someone must be stained with that blood, so he decided to willingly become that someone. A masked figure lifts a blade, taking on the atonement that everyone in crowd must bear. Beneath a full moon, a swordsman stands, cloak stirring, sword drawn for a lonely oath. A blade flashes across the night skyline, striking for the dream still called paradise. A needle-thin sword gleams, its point aimed with cold, practiced intent. Back in the present, the herald cries out that the sacred duel to goddess Lepri begins. The black bride against the little gladiator, and the arena roars, "Let the match begin." The veiled woman carries the air of a mercenary, someone who has killed and moved on. But now that boy seems like someone who has been stained with much blood while hiding in the shadows. Arhan stands calm, his violet eye steady, wearing a stillness that unsettles even her. The black bride says nothing, watching, sensing that this is a difficult situation to understand. Her needle blade lunges, a silver line tearing through the air toward him. Nothing has changed, Arhan tells himself, and his body answers before his mind can flinch. The strike slices past empty space where his throat should have been. A blue spark of mana flickers at his eye as he slips the killing thrust. He dodged my sword, she thinks, her eye going wide. How is this even possible? It should have been impossible for him to even respond before her blade arrived. He is a completely different being from the trembling air she cornered in that alley. A steady hand closes around a hilt, and the whole arena seems to hold its breath. Steel meets steel in a burst of sparks as Arhan turns her assault aside. His counter cuts through the air with a weight that does not belong to a boy. Blades scream and light explodes between them in a clash neither expected. His time, even his breathing and his movements, seem to belong to someone else entirely. "Earth," she whispers, as his footwork roots into the ground like an old master's technique. A slender sword hovers between them, and one impossible question hangs in her mind: are you? Their blades lock, the veiled swordswoman and the blonde heir bound in a duel that will not end here. The duel roars back to life, needle blades whistling as the black bride hunts the blonde heir across the arena floor. Arhan turns his head into the storm, blade rising, tracking a woman who fights like she has never known mercy. Steel screams against steel, sparks bleeding into the dark as her thrusts come faster than the eye can follow. The veiled swordswoman drives forward, her whole body a single honed edge aimed at his throat. It is as if he is fighting an assassin and a mercenary at the very same time. His stances shift relentlessly, folding one into the next, making it impossible to guess where he goes. Every read she attempts dies on arrival, his footwork adding an extreme layer of unpredictability. This blonde boy surpassed the level of a mere beginner a very long time ago. Blades collide in a burst of white light, and the crowd feels the arena tremble beneath them. In the stands, a grinning bald man leans in, asking if the young gladiator has any chance at all. His companion scoffs, reminding him whose opponent this is, the undefeated gladiator, the Black Bride. Behind the veil, her single blue eye narrows, cold and patient, weighing the weight of him. A killing intent rolls off her that feels as if it could freeze the very soul. A strong scent of blood seems to blanket this entire place, red mana coiling in the air. Two blades hang in the dark, and we drift into the world an old master once taught Arhan to see. The female mercenary, the professional, and the assassin of dawn, though the two lived completely different lives. They shared a common trait, both forged to stand against enemies far stronger than themselves. Their weapons became swords of struggle, tempered by every night they were meant to die. For one who has only just taken his first steps, an assassin's life might be overwhelming, so do not be consumed. The old swordsman stands with crossed arms while the young Arhan kneels, absorbing every hard-won lesson. You must understand and accept his life, the old master says, and make it your own. Arhan exhales into the present, breath slowing, that borrowed wisdom settling behind his blue eyes. The mentor's voice notes he has calmed a little, but the true trial begins right now. That girl has already grasped his capabilities during their brief and brutal clash. From here on she will hunt him with all her might, holding nothing back. Her needle blade flickers through the gloom, tracing lethal lines toward the young heir. Arhan drops low into a crouch, sword reversed, every muscle wound tight and ready. This is a place without a single bush to hide in, where an assassin's skills are halved. In this open arena, his best option is to never expect his opponent to let her guard down. So he resolves to secure a distance that is advantageous only to him. He must buy time, letting the ticking clock become a weapon of its own. The 3-minute limit is a card in his favor if he utilizes this point well. Blades blur past each other, the two duelists trading ground in a heartbeat. The black bride's eye flares wide as he vanishes from where she expected him, and she breathes, "What?" because his true plan is to close this distance in a single instant. She twists mid-air, blade snapping down to meet the blonde heir surging up beneath her. The mustached mentor muses, "Oh dear, it seems you do not know the true power of a sword walker, young master." They project a path to suppress their opponents, not only constructing an advantageous domain of offense and defense, but they also expand that path inward, drawing tremendous power up from within. It is the very art of becoming a true superhuman, reflected in a single widening eye. The black bride uncoils like a shadow, her thin blade painting a killing arc through the light. Arhan's eyes snap wide as her speed folds the distance between them to nothing. They collide in a shower of sparks, his guard barely holding against the falling weight of her strike. Her power and speed are now incomparable to the cautious start of the match. This is the true power of the black bride, and Arhan feels every ounce of it. Ordinary swordsmanship invariably leaves gaps between attacks, an unavoidable opening the moment one resets their stance. However, the black bride's sword has no such gap, one motion bleeding seamlessly into the next. Even as it seems to stop, the next attack is already flowing through. Her blade moves like a brush, painting a world upon a canvas of empty air. Every cut lands like the brushstrokes of a master painter, deliberate and endless. She spins through the dark, veil trailing, weaving a lattice of silver threads around him. Her single eye gleams white through the shadow as the strokes close in from every side. Steel meets steel in a burst of sparks, Arhan straining to hold the flurry back. The impact detonates in a flash, and a startled cry tears loose from the clash. Arhan grits his teeth, catching her needle blade against his own, arms shuddering with the strain. This, the mentor names it, is the sword of the East. Swordsmen from the East continent use a style called martial arts, movements resembling nature itself, advancing as if floating like a feather. It flows from their unique footwork, light and impossible to pin down. An elegant, delicate display of their sword trajectory, all of it connecting into one, drawing beautiful curves. Arhan is swept up in the current, sparks trailing as her curves crash toward him. The whole storm comes crashing down like a wave meant to drown him. And the moment those movements finally stop, Arhan seizes it, blade thrusting clean into the gap. A single blue eye widens above the veil, a bead of sweat sliding down as she realizes too late. Her hair whips through a coil of white light as the trap she never saw begins to spring. To deliver the end, Arhan lets the curve of his own attack complete itself. A ribbon of light loops around her stance, the East's beautiful curve turned back against its master. Caught you the moment lands, and the undefeated black bride is finally ensnared. A hand reaches through the glow as the coil tightens, and the arena holds its breath for what comes next. It opens far from the arena, on a memory, a grand cathedral looming over a city turned into a rotting mire. A young Arhan is dragged along, and the only future he ever knew was reclaiming a stolen freedom. He crouched alone in the dark with death rising up to his chin, a blade at his side. A bloodied hand presses against cold stone, the last desperate reach of a boy fleeing this land. In those years he shouldered the heavy burden of running away, over and over, from everything. Small and hooded, he vanished down another shadowed alley, one more escape in a lifetime of them. So he ran and ran and ran again, breath ragged, never once daring to look back. The past presses close, a cloaked figure hunting him through the endless corridors of his childhood. A pursuer draws a blade, patient and certain, waiting for the moment his little legs finally give out. When you reach the end of your run, the voice warns, there is nowhere left to hide. It was a foe so overwhelming that back then, he could not even dare to lift his face toward it. That red-cloaked terror still haunts him, the kind of enemy a gutter child was never meant to survive. The memory reaches its end, and reality snaps back with the sharp crack of steel finding flesh. In the arena, Arhan's ribbon of light loops the black bride, exactly as he promised when he caught her. Her single visible eye widens, and for the first time the undefeated queen looks genuinely startled. But then a question forms in his mind, glowing pale in the dark. What is this tiny circle? For some reason this small ring feels exactly like that, the thing that always let him slip free. It is the same instinct born in the crowded alleys he knows so well, the space that meant survival. Steel rings against steel as the memory and the duel finally braid together into one motion. His blade whips through the air, faster now, the child's escape reforged into a swordsman's strike. The black bride twists to answer him, her needle blade flashing in the low arena light. Their weapons weave a tight lattice, two masters trading blows inside a shrinking pocket of space. This ring, he decides, I will call this circle mine, and he seizes control of it completely. A name fitting for me, he thinks, an opening, the gap through which every path becomes possible. His sword drives forward through that opening, unstoppable, threading a needle no one else could see. The bride's veiled eye locks onto him, red mana bleeding at the edges as her composure begins to crack. She lunges to counter, but he is already flowing around her, small and slippery as a gutter rat. It is the talent to find a way to survive even in the mire, the one gift the slums gave him. Now that he thinks on it, his brothers used to call him exactly that, half insult, half awe. A genius, they said, and today that filthy little rat stands poised inside a champion's guard. Droplets of blood fall from the needle blade, proof he pierced her path and escaped in a split second. The black bride steadies herself and asks, quiet and cold, but what will you do now? Arhan raises his sword level, eyes fixed, refusing to give her a single breath of recovery. The enemies this dagger's owner once faced were skilled Walker-class powerhouses in their own right. She not only avoided a fatal wound, she even managed to counterattack in that same brief instant. As a result, her ribs will break if she shifts even a little, and distance is now impossible to make. With her slightest chance of winning gone, the wise choice here would simply be to forfeit. Forfeiting is not shameful, and onlooker reasons, as long as you save your life you can climb again. There is always another promotion, another day, however humiliating the loss might feel right now. But a caravan, the crowd murmurs, staring at the boy who will not lower his blade. Such a weak option does not exist for me, Arhan answers, and the whole arena hears it in his stance. Fighters in the audience cross their arms, unsettled, sizing up a bronze rookie who refuses to fold. To think a mere bronze wounded the undefeated queen, one gapes, and he means to keep fighting like that. Two silhouettes square off across the arena floor, and everyone senses this is no longer a rookie beatdown. The whispers change key, and someone breathes it aloud. We are witnessing the birth of a star. A grinning spectator leans toward the seats of the powerful. Gentlemen, are you watching this closely? An announcer's voice swells over the arena, the time remaining until the little gladiator's victory is. Only 10 seconds, the call rings out, just 10 seconds between this boy and the impossible. The black bride steadies her wounded frame, gathering herself for one final, desperate exchange. Arhan's blade hangs ready, a single point of cold light in the hush before the last clash. His blue eye burns with focus, and somewhere in his mind the old question returns, what is a genius? Their weapons detonate together in a spray of sparks, the arena floor cracking beneath the impact. It refers to those who always find a path. The mentor's voice explains, even in the worst hardship. Those who face the trials everyone else calls impossible and refuse to name them as such, and who then calmly achieve success where all others fell, blade carving light through the dark, engraving their achievements into history itself, names that outlast the men who earned them. But Arhan, the voice admits, honestly falls short of a true-born genius by that strict measure. His body buckles under the strain, the toll of forcing a fragile vessel far past its natural limit. His innate body is frail, and his senses for learning martial arts are honestly rather dull. While others easily learn 10 things, he barely manages to grasp 2 or 3, and it always cost him blood. That is the true limit of the vessel he was born with, a ceiling most men would never break. So geniuses like him may never find the single perfect answer that comes so easily to others. But they never give up and they stand firm, bleeding, refusing to fall while breath remains. And they are known, the words declare against the black, by another far greater name. Then the old mustached master appears in memory, speaking the name with quiet pride, Arhan Karavan. Even in a place where you lost everything and were left utterly alone in a lightless abyss. You who never once let go of your sword until the very end, no matter how the darkness pressed in. My descendant, the ancestor says warmly, recognizing the god of war's fire burning in the boy. You, the voice continues, as the needle blade sweeps in for one last murderous arc. Steel meets steel in a blinding flash, Arhan planting his feet against the bride's final assault. A single tear-bright eye stares wide, the black bride realizing what this boy truly is. He spins low beneath her strike, cloak flaring, riding his little circle straight into her guard. You possess the very qualities it takes to become a hero, the ancestor finishes, and he believes it. His blade flares as it comes around, painting a bright curve through the settling dust. The bride's needle sword glints one final time, both fighters committing everything to this instant. Is this how it was done, she wonders, watching her own beautiful art turn back against her. Her single blue eye fills the frame, wide and unblinking, as understanding finally reaches her. Arhan bursts through, blade first, a blonde blur of motion no champion should have to answer twice. It was your bizarre, dancer-like movements, she admits, that unraveled everything she thought she knew. The needle blade slashes crimson through the air, a last brilliant flourish from the fallen queen. Blood arcs across her veil, and beneath it her grin is almost admiring, one eye gleaming red. The strike lands home, and the undefeated black bride sags as her flawless record finally shatters. However, this time you fell just a tiny bit short, my descendant, but there is no need to be disappointed. Because today, the ancestor says with pride, you have once again done the thing that matters most. You have overcome, the single word ringing out as Arhan stands victorious over the fallen queen. The announcer's cry splits the arena, victory to the little gladiator, and the crowd erupts around him. If you made it all the way to the end of this one, you are genuinely a real one, and I appreciate you. These recaps take serious time to put together, so drop a like and subscribe. It honestly helps a ton, and I'll catch you in the next one.